Commission is a public body appointed by the City Council that exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. The Appearance Commission's responsibilities relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. Today's agenda includes requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing requests for design alternates, the Appearance Commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on the request. That means it's like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. The commission's decisions are constrained by the standards in the city's ordinance and facts presented at the hearing. The commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standards set forth in state law and the city's ordinances. The commission must base its decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. This meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch. However, participation in the evidentiary hearing is limited. Parties have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Witnesses may testify as to the facts to which they are competent to testify, so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, the commission needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on traffic safety. We will now conduct the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda. So our first case is, I will now open the first evidentiary hearing for item DA5 2022 on today's agenda. I'd like to ask Casey to come up and introduce this hearing. And before you get started, can I swear you in? Casey, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You can proceed.
Thank you. All right, as you mentioned, the first case this evening, or I should say, my name is Casey Evans. I'm a principal planner with the City of Raleigh Planning and Development Department. Our first case is DA-5 2022. The property is located at 200 West Hargett Street at the northwest corner of Hargett Street and McDowell Street, which is right next door to where we are now. The property is zoned DX 20 shopfront. That's the downtown mixed-use district shopfront frontage. The East Civic Tower project is a proposed 20-story civic building, which will encompass the majority of the lot, and it has frontage along both Hargett Street and McDowell Street. The applicant is requesting 2 design alternates related to the building massing requirements in UDO section 3.3.3. They're requesting relief from the step back requirement along Hargett Street, as well as the step back requirement along McDowell Street. I should say complete relief from those requirements. The building massing requirements in the UDO require that buildings 13 or more stories have a minimum of a 12-foot step back above the first floor but below the 13th floor along any side of the building that faces a public street. Here are the 5 findings related to building massing. I have those there for your reference during the hearing. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Casey. All right, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. Can the applicant come forward?
Hi.
Oh, all right. Can you, before you begin, please state your name for the record, address, in relation to the case.
Right. My name is David York, Deputy City Attorney for the City of Raleigh, here on behalf of the City of Raleigh. Address 222 West Hargett Street, 27602.
And I don't think I need to swear you in, so.
No, but we have There's 4 folks with me.
Okay.
I'll introduce them, and if it's okay with the commission, I'll bring them up each at a time and let you swear them in, if
Sounds
that's how you prefer to do it. We have 2 that we plan on presenting evidence in chief, but the other 2 will be sworn in case they're needed to answer questions. That's all right. Priscilla Williams with Construction Management Division of the Engineering Services. If you'll just state your name, your credentials, your address for the commission, and your involvement or your relationship with the project.
Good afternoon. I am Priscilla Tyree Williams. I am the City Construction Projects Administrator and Project Manager for the East Civic Tower project. I work out of One Exchange Plaza, which is 219 Fayetteville Street, Suite 801, Raleigh 27601.
Thank you, Priscilla. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I so affirm.
Thank you.
Next, we have Elizabeth Noe, also with Construction Management.
I'm Elizabeth Noy, and I'm a project engineer with construction management in the division of the Engineering Services Department. I'm an intern architect, and I am a member of the project team for the East Civic Tower, and then also the project manager for the master plan.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And my address is 2019 Fayetteville Street, Suite 801, Raleigh, North Carolina 27601.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And then we have Hal Bowman and Ben Horn with Ratio Design, whichever one wants to come first.
Good evening. My name is Hal Bowen. I reside at 5628 Winlake Court in Raleigh, 27606. I'm an architect and the principal in charge with Ratio Architects. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And I'm Ben Horn, Senior Associate with Ratio Architects. I'm the project manager for the East Civic Tower. Address is 227 Fayetteville Street, Suite 301, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601.
Thank you, Ben. Do you swear or approve or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Ben. I think you can proceed with your presentation.
All right, thank you. First, I'd like to have Elizabeth Noe come up. As she had indicated before, she was the project manager for the master plan, the Civic Campus Master Plan, which is where we're standing here. And so I'm going to have her give just a little bit of background on that before we get into the actual design adjustment. Just
Or
Right.
down? Okay.
you can go down or up.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. York, and good afternoon to the Commission. As we said before, I'm Elizabeth Noy, and I'm currently a project engineer working with the Construction Management Division of the Engineering Services Department. I'm part of the East Civic Tower team, and prior to this involvement, I was the project manager of the Civic Campus Master Plan in the Planning and Development Department. I will be sharing information regarding the history of that project and the content of the master plan document. In 2016, City Council approved a request to start a master planning process for an updated Avery Upchurch municipal block. Skidmore, Owens & Morrill, commonly referred to as SOM, was hired to work with the City of Raleigh. The master plan process discovered the organizational goals and aspirations for a consolidated campus. This master plan looked at the generic goals for sizing the building, security processes, and workplace concepts. Also included parking concerns, urban design goals, and the program of departments to be relocated. Emphasis was given to the redevelopment scenarios, the phasing of the campus, and the massing of the phases on the block. Meetings were conducted with the city manager's office and different departments of the city to start to understand the needs and aspirations for city services, public spaces, and employee work environment. The Civic Campus Master Plan was approved in 2018, along with the approval of the design of Phase 1, which was released in a separate RFQ. Okay. The approved Civic Campus Master Plan identified 3 phases of redevelopment. These three phases, was numbered. However, the Phase 2 and Phase 3 may be interchanged based on the City Council priorities in the future. Phase 1, the first building of the Civic Campus Plan will be on the corner of Hargett and McDowell Streets. The 110 McDowell building will be demolished, and in its place, Phase 1 will be constructed. Phase 1 will include the consolidated program of the current fragmented downtown workforce, which has employees spread out in 5 facilities, which include the City of Raleigh-owned buildings of 1 Exchange Plaza, the Raleigh Municipal Building, and 310 West Martin Street. And will also include the City of Raleigh leased spaces at the Professional Building and at 1 City Plaza. Phase 1 will include a new council chamber, a centralized customer service area, a conference floor for staff and the public, an art gallery, and around 16 floors of workspaces. Phase 1 is expected to handle around 10 years or more of workforce growth. The second phase of the Civic Campus development may see the R&B, or Raleigh Municipal Building, demolished and replaced with the second municipal building, envisioned in the master plan as a mirror of Phase 1 development and on the east side, and the second building would provide expansion space for department offices, additional conference facilities, and public-facing functions. Phase 2 will allow the future growth for city employees for several more decades, creating a legacy destination for a consolidated civic block. Phase 2 would also see the completion of a public plaza in the space between the 2 complementary buildings of Phase 1 and Phase 2. This civic space will create an amenity area for visitors to the building, as well as a visual extension of Nash Square. This plaza will create a gateway to the government center, as well as engage the public realm on the street. The third phase of the Civic Campus development concerns the northern half of the Avery C. Upchurch block. Phase 3 may see the existing municipal parking structure demolished and replaced with a third-party mixed-use development project. This potential public-private partnership could see several additional buildings up to 20 stories in height and has the potential of adding an additional 1 million gross square feet of building area. Phase 3 development may complement the civic functions of Phase 1 and Phase 2, providing a combination of active ground floor retail, creative office space, parking, and residential uses. However, it is not envisioned to include any civic program at this time. For a little bit of history, in 1792, William Christmas was hired to develop the city plan for Raleigh. Christmas modeled his design after William Penn's Philadelphia plan. Despite substantial expansion in recent decades, downtown Raleigh retains much of the original Christmas street grid, with 3 out of the 5 public squares remaining. The Avery C. Upchurch Municipal Block is conveniently located adjacent to one of the original Christmas plan squares, which is Nash Square, and the City of Raleigh has maintained a city hall on this block since the 1950s, and for the past 70 years, Nash Square has been our city hall's front lawn. As part of the Civic Campus Master Plan, urban design concepts were incorporated in the development of the massing on the block. SOM sought to create an exciting public realm by extending Nash Square into the new Avery C. Upchurch Municipal Block. This civic plaza would be surrounded by 3 phases of the civic campus, and with the most emphasis being surrounded by the 2 mirrored main civic buildings on the south block. Engage in the park. These connections to Nash Square and the centralized location on Hargett Street was intended to reinforce the civic heart of the block. Hargett Street, which runs adjacent to the municipal block, is considered a primary street connecting the warehouse district to the Fayetteville Street business district. It is already a major east-west corridor for downtown. Proximity to transit, parks, major retail, music venues, dining destinations, and the nearby convention center will mean the site may experience a large amount of pedestrian activity. During the master plan phase, SOM generally referenced the existing City of Raleigh plans to create a viable master plan concept. Originally, the idea for the campus was generated from the City of Raleigh strategic plan and the 2015 downtown plan. However, once entering the design for Phase 1, consultants were asked to reference the 2030 comprehensive plan for guidance. The community climate action plan goals and the downtown plan were also used as references for the design phase. In 2030, the comprehensive plan is considered to be the key policy document that helps make the city workable, livable, and prosperous. The plan states that it provides a vision and strategies for Raleigh to prosper and grow as a modern 21st century city. The plan states that it's an integrated approach to all aspects of Raleigh physical development and related economic and social issues, with an emphasis on environmental, economic, and social sustainability, enhancing land use and transportation coordination, and developing attractive and prosperous neighborhoods for all. Policy used from the comp plan is very exhaustive, but I've highlighted several high priority policies that address the design phase and the downtown development. We reference the policy UD 1.2, architectural features, the policy UD 1.3, creating attractive facades, policy DT 7.5, ground level design, and policy DT 7.12, plaza square perimeter uses. The master plan was completed by SOM in 2018. Their contribution created an aspirational plan for the city, creating a guidebook of wish list items, recommendations, goals, sizing scenarios, and long-term development concepts. However, the master plan is unable to test the design assumptions and is not considered part of the official design process. That aspect of the refinement of the plan was undertaken by Phase 1 design team of Ratio and Henny Larson. The master plan may influence the design, but during the design phase, the plan is tested. Using an iterative process, the design phase takes the aspirational plan and checks it against the realities of regulation, site constraints, existing conditions, constructability, and more detailed information including structural systems and extensive program development. For example, look at the two diagrams on the right. The image on the left is the literal conceptual diagram from the master plan introduced by SOM. On the right is the reimagined concept by Ratio and Henny Larson. There are different interpretations with the same underlying organizing elements. SOM's master plan concept shows two identical towers and south of the block, central plaza between the two buildings, using stairs and landings, a kind of more urban plaza concept. Ratio Henny Larson, image on the right, builds on this concept to reflect more knowledge of the climate, local climate, and a more detailed building program for Phase 1 and the regulatory constraints that exist. This is reflected in the changes of the sizing of the Phase 2 building, the plaza area, and the streetscape requirements. Ratio Henny Larson created an inviting southern porch concept with a series of planted terraces with trellis-shaded amenity spaces that gradually go up the elevation of the building from the street level. Both diagrams reflect the building phasing, the block massing, and the central plaza concept from the plan. But Ratio and Henny Larson developed a little bit further on the master plan concepts by creating a more realistic version for implementation. So at this point, this kind of concludes my part of the presentation. So I want to thank you, and I will take questions now if you have any.
You have any questions of Ms. Noe? Thank you.
I don't think so. Let's keep moving and just be aware of the time that we've got for this presentation. Thank you.
Gotcha. I'm going to ask Ben Horn if he'll come up and describe the design alternate and how it meets the 5 findings.
Thank you, Ms. York. Again, my name is Ben Horn, Senior Associate with Ratio Design, the project manager for the project. And we'll walk through the 5 findings, but first I wanted to start with this diagram to show one of the main reasons that we placed the tower massing where we did was to react to the master plan concept of the central plaza that Ms. Noe described. To allow for the vibrant terraces on levels 2, 3, and 4, and then to create an unobstructed view in the council chamber, similar to what we have today. So this is an image of what that'll look like, creating an unobstructed view, free of structure, so that everyone in the council chambers can experience the democracy on display. So Casey already kind of shared about the massing standards. On the right is a diagram of what the allowable massing is. And then we show our proposed massing inside of that is an example of what we're looking at as we walk through the findings. So here are the 5 findings, and we will go through them one by one in further detail. So the first finding, the approved alternate is consistent with the intent of the building massing regulations. The intent of the building massing standards is found in 3.1 or 3.3.a. The intent is building massing regulations is to manage the impact of tall buildings located near the public right-of-way. Setbacks are intended to avoid a canyon effect by providing access to light and air at the street level and mitigating wind impacts. The massing regulations also produce a consistent street wall and visually reduce the perceived scale of the building. So the East Civic Tower, looks at that setback on the west facade that I mentioned before as a way to reduce the canyon effect and introduce light into the interior of the block. The facade uses articulation and canopies at the street level to reduce the wind impacts and changes materiality and uses horizontal banding to help create a consistent street wall and visually reduce the perceived scale at the street. Design alternate findings number 2, the approved alternate uses an architectural base distinguishable from the building above that enhances the pedestrian environment through a change of material, fenestration, ornamentation, rhythm, and other sculpting of the base. So the East Civic Tower distinguishes the base from the tower with materiality, rhythm, scale, and transparency. The base focuses on the public functions of the building, which combined with the street amenity help to enhance the public environment. The East Civic Tower builds off local inspiration that Ms. Noe described, picking up on the southern front porch, which creates a shaded, inviting space that reduces the scale at the street. The transparency of the base creates visible connections from the interior and the exterior to help the occupants enjoy the street life. And the base facade also ties to Raleigh as the city of the oaks, with large curved fins at the base to replicate the oak trees. So the material and inspiration for the inspiration for the materiality of the East Civic Tower is the Mount Airy granite, envisioning a simple white volume. That white volume is carved away at the base to reach maximum transparency and blend the inside and out, which visually brings in Nash Square, and combined with that visual connection to Nash Square and the amenity space at the street level, helps to enhance the pedestrian environment with that visual connection to nature. Critical public elements are located on the lower floors to further enhance that public environment, creating opportunities for employees and residents to meet, transact, and exchange ideas. The transparency of these actions at the street creates an interest and identifies the East Civic Tower as a destination in the downtown Raleigh fabric. The strong horizontal banding, vertical GFRC fins, and large amounts of glass help to distinguish the base from the tower. The deeper projection of the entrance canopy helps to distinguish the corner of Hargett and McDowell as the main entrance. And then building off of those horizontal bands and that entrance canopy, we add the brise-soleil on the southwest corner, which helps to reduce the scale at the street. The tower is seen as a mass on top of the transparent base. This mass is then carved away into precast panels and punched openings of glass. Each panel has an arch at the top to help increase the depth and variation and create interest and mitigate the effects of the wind around the tower. The precast panels are varied slightly in dimension, creating an organic movement as your eye scales the tower. And if we jump back here to this elevation, you can start to see how the simple geometry of the tower with the subtle variation of the precast panels is done to address light on the interior with the offices, and so that creates the tower, and then that's juxtaposed to the base, and the base is more sculpted with displays and the geometry which are reacting to the views that are trying to be created. All this is used to enhance the public experience. So we set the building back the full 15 feet allowable per our shop front frontage to help build a vibrant amenity space. So the finding number 3, the approved alternate proposes a building setback behind the sidewalk in lieu of the required step back. The resulting open space includes pedestrian amenities such as seating areas, trees, and landscape, or other outdoor dining. So the shaded area is the amenity space that we're providing on the street level. It exceeds the required amenity space per our for the project, and then we add the terraces on 2, 3, and 4 to add an additional 141 square feet of amenity space. So all told, we're far exceeding the required amenity space required for the project. These are some views of that amenity space. So view number 1 gives a glimpse of the provisions along Hargett and in the distance McDowell. Number 2 is at the southwest corner of the building underneath the brise-soleil, so you get an idea of how that provides some cover and protection from the sun, but is still transparent enough that you can that you're not in a cave. The terrace plantings and seatings are visible there, which provide a great view of Nash Square across the street. And then image number 3 is one of our roof terraces, and it shows the provisions of additional planting, seatings, and outdoor dining. Along McDowell, this is a image of the amenity space on McDowell. So the amenity space on McDowell is heavier on plantings and bike parking. That combined with the street trees provides a calming effect as you to juxtapose the heavy traffic on McDowell. So just quickly want to circle back to the massing and talk about one of the reasons for shifting the tower to where we did was to provide a connection to the future master plan, create the unobstructed views in the council chamber, and let light penetrate deeper into the block. Looking at the detailed view of Hargett Street, as I've said before, we set the building back the full 15 feet. One of the other things that we're kind of combating here is the streetscape requirement that we have eats into the property a little bit, which also influenced us pushing the building back the full setback that we were allowed. This image shows how the stepped outdoor areas with planters and seating interact with the facade. It also shows the horizontal bands and the dimensional quality that they have and how that's starting to distinguish between the base and the tower. Here's the detailed view of the McDowell side. Again, the 15-foot setback, allowing for more planting and bike parking. It also provides a very wide sidewalk experience to help create separation between the heavy traffic on McDowell. Design alternate number 4, the building uses architectural treatments to mitigate wind impacts, increase light at the pedestrian level, and visually reduce the scale of the building. So the compass rose here shows that the main wind direction for our project for our site is coming out of the southwest. So we did wind studies of the allowable massing and the proposed massing to show how our project improves upon the wind. So as you can see here with the allowable massing, because it is brought all the way up to the property line, it creates a buildup of wind along McDowell and at the corner of McDowell and Hargett Street. When we juxtapose that with our proposed massing, pulling the building back, the variation of the facade, and our horizontal bands and canopies help to reduce the buildup of wind along McDowell Street, and the canopies and the brise-soleil create a sheltered space that also help to reduce the wind impact on the project. The last finding is the building does not cause undue shadow impacts on the public spaces, amenity areas, or surrounding streets. And so again, we did a shadow study of the allowable massing to compare that to the proposed massing. So here's the allowable massing, which takes up the majority of the site. And then when we juxtapose that with our massing, the biggest thing that I want to point out here is the reduced footprint of the tower allows us, as I've said before, to get light deeper into the block, which we think benefits the overall master plan. And then while we do show some shading of our amenity area, given our climate and given that a lot of those are south facing, some of that shading might actually create will benefit the occupants of those terraces. So to just conclude and summarize, the East Civic Tower meets the intent of the massing design alternate findings. It reduces the canyon effect with that west step back. The variation in facade reduces the wind impacts. We use architectural features, scale, materiality, and transparency to distinguish the base from the tower. We've proposed a setback instead of the required step back to increase the amenity space and enhance the pedestrian experience. The building uses facade variation, horizontal banding, and canopies to help reduce the wind impacts. And finally, the reduced tower massing allows deeper light penetration into the block. The resulting shadows do not adversely affect the street or public spaces more than the allowable massing would. So that concludes the presentation, and at this time, if you guys have any questions, I'd happily take them.
Thank you for the presentation. I have just one quick simple question, which is, could you just review the required setbacks and how you met them? So are they 15 feet on all sides, on all three sides, or 15 feet on on McDowell and Hargett, and then
It's 15 feet on McDowell and Hargett, and then we're within a foot of the property line on the west and north.
okay. And what is the required setback on that side?
I do not believe there's a required setback
west
on
side?
those. On the west or north.
On the west or north, okay. So you're meeting the setbacks on what, McDowell is the north side, right?
McDowell is the east side. Hargett is the south side. So the required setbacks, I think the minimum setback for downtown mixed use is 5 feet. Mm-hmm. And then the maximum allowable for shop front to be within the build to is 15.
Okay. So basically you're maxing that out in order
to increase the amenity space. The streetscape requirement is, this is a good image. So the streetscape requirement is 16 feet. It's a 6 foot planted area and 10 foot clear sidewalk. So it actually eats into our property line, which is another reason to pull the building back the full amount.
Okay.
The only other, the recent text change about build to, which allows for which allows for amenity space to increase to count as part of it. I don't know that I'm probably delving into an area that is, come on. So I guess this is probably a good slide. So we meet the build to along McDowell, the build to along Hargett. We meet with the new text change that includes amenity space as a part of that build to.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions from the commission at this time?
You all came in front of the commission previously.
About a year ago.
Yeah, about a year ago. Can you just kind of give a brief overview of the differences and any feedback that the commission may have had that Do you guys have any of that?
So the last time when we came before the commission about a year ago, we thought that there were going to be more design alternates that we were going to need to seek. The build to was one of the things that we had talked about. There was a question about blank wall, but given that we're a civic building, the blank wall requirements do not apply. And then one of the big things that was mentioned was our treatment of McDowell. We had, at that point in time, we had very conceptualized landscape plans, and we were not really showing the best treatment of what we were doing from a landscape perspective on either side. But with the sculpting of the base, it showed how we were starting to open up and create a better pedestrian realm along Hargett. And so we went back and looked at how can we both provide that passageway through on McDowell so that it's an enjoyable experience as you're walking the street, but it's probably not a place that you're sitting when you're sitting next to McDowell, which even though it's 35 miles an hour, it's 50 and clear. So that is probably one of the biggest changes. And I think that covers the previous comments from the commission.
I have a question for Elizabeth. I know super conceptual at this point as far as third phase, but would the design for this phase then want to be mirrored in the third phase potentially in terms of positioning of the building?
Well, the third phase is very far out in the future, and we do think it will be a private-public partnership. So we would probably, a developer would probably inform that design. So I don't think that our building, it may influence it, the design, but there's no way I could anticipate that.
But we would anticipate that the second phase would be
It would, we
the
would
same.
assume it's
So
similar.
if we're approving this here, that the second phase would be basically a mirror image of
Yes, or
this.
complementary. That's correct. Any more questions?
So, yeah, one more question for, I think, Mr. Bowen, probably. If you could go back to the slide that has, that shows the floor plan in council chambers. Yep. So I think I heard you say that one of the reasons for positioning the building all the way over towards McDowell Street is that it allows you to have an open space like we see in this room today. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the implications of having structure over top of that council chambers and what went into that decision?
Yeah. So if we were to take the tower and shift it, right now you can see the line of columns right behind the council chamber. The tower is cantilevering about 10 feet over the council chamber right now. So those columns are not the end of the tower. It extends out about another 10 feet. We looked at different shapes for the tower, and we looked at shifting it over. When we shift it over and we have to start bearing on the top of that volume, it creates transfer beams that in a concrete structure become almost a floor thick. If we would have decided to do a steel structure, it would have created a situation where we would have had to do steel trusses that would be about a floor thick. So it just becomes both. We did a cost analysis to see what it would take, and it's cost prohibitive to have those transfer beams, and then it also affects how we can program the space above it. The space above it becomes really constrained because you can't really pass through those beams. So it kind of controls what kind of program space you can have above it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I guess going along with that, I'm having a hard time understanding where this ends versus this begins. I mean, is there any opportunity to shift property lines or to shifting that over if it needed to be, or is it pretty much, you've got as far as you can go demolish wise before you start interrupting this building that we're in now for phase 2? Does that make any sense?
I think so. Let me go back to. So, as you can see, the pink line is our property line to the west, and we're right as close as we are comfortable to building on the property line. There was some contemplation about a recombination of the entire block. That doesn't necessarily give us that much leeway to make the building bigger at this point. If we wanted to look at making the building bigger or allowing adjustments in that nature to help us shift the tower, it would involve demolishing R&B. It would involve demolishing this building before we would be able to proceed.
Thank you. And thanks for the recap, because that's exactly how I heard it before. So I just
Yep.
wanted the commission, since most people are newer, to hear that. So that was great feedback.
Okay. Any other questions?
And I think I interpreted this from the presentation, but versus providing a step back less than the requirement, you've prioritized on McDowell Street additional street width for the pedestrian experience.
Yeah. And we, providing a step back on McDowell or Hargett would have, the tower floor plate is already constrained by the council chamber on one side and the general size of our site. So if we would have provided a step back on either side, then it further constrains that and really puts us in a hard place with our program, which is ultimately serving the city to bring everybody together into one building and serve the citizens better.
Can you flip to the slide that is the McDowell streetscape?
This one here, or the rendering?
The rendering.
So here we're showing that we'll have bike parking, which is part of the temporary parking requirement that we have, raised planters, and then what you're seeing on the left side of the image are the required street trees within the streetscape, and that opens up a nice wide sidewalk to safely enjoy the amenity space as you walk to the entrance or traverse through the city towards Nash Square.
I'll say I'm excited by the wider sidewalk there, but just out of curiosity, did you look at potentially less of a setback to then be able to provide the step back?
So because of the encroachment of the streetscape into our site, if we push the building any closer to the street, we lose the minimum 10-foot requirement to have it be considered an amenity space. So that's the other piece that we're running into.
It's 16 feet, you said, in the streetscape on McDowell?
Mhm, yeah.
And what's the setback right now?
It's 15 feet from the property line. The 16 feet starts at the curb.
Uh-huh. So from the curb, how far is it now, is what you're proposing?
So from the curb, currently it's about 11 feet. So it's 26 feet from the curb to the face of the building. So we're right there.
And you're saying you need 10 feet of amenity, 10 feet of amenity width, of that 15 feet is needed for amenity width?
Yep.
And what's the other 5 feet needed for?
It's part of the streetscape.
Part of the streetscape. Oh, yeah, because it's 16 feet. That's right. So you're just right. You're basically just those two things.
Mhm.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the foregoing expert testimony, the city has presented competent material and substantial evidence demonstrating compliance with the 5 findings required for approval of building massing design alternate. On behalf of the city of Raleigh, we'd like to thank you for your time and consideration and request that you approve this building massing design alternate, and we remain available to answer any questions you may have during your deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing that presentation, I'd like to open up to the public to see if there is anyone from the public that would like to speak relating this case. No. Applicant rebuttal to no public comment, so we'll move on to final closing statement, which you've already done. So I think I would like to close this case for deliberation by the commission. Anybody have any opening comments?
Go ahead. You can start.
Go for it.
So candidly, when I read this afternoon, I did not like that there was 0 step back on McDowell and Hargett. You know, typically we see something along that, and we're talking about a reduction of the step back, not a complete elimination. So I struggle with it a little bit in that respect. However, I think there are considerations that we ought to take into consideration with the council chambers, which is a little bit different than the type of interior space that we would normally see in a building like that. I think we'd all agree we want it to be the big open space like this, and big columns simply get in the way of that. I really like the amenity area on the west side. The step backs that they've done that you can see there on the screen, the 3 different step backs and the additional amenity area there. So I think I begin to become okay with what's being requested based on that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like even just looking at this elevation here, there really is hardly any perceivable change in the facade between that base and the top. But as I see some of the renderings, there is, change of material and fenestration and ornamentation that probably meets the design alternate findings, just barely.
Well, I think the key word is that does it enhance the public? Does it enhance the public environment? And that's what I have a hard time with. I think it's a very harsh environment for a main street that's coming into Raleigh. To see just a big flat plane, I would like to encourage them to take another look and do something to bring that pedestrian scale down as you're walking along. I appreciate the extra width. I think that'll be nice. But as we're driving into town, you see this big wall.
You're talking about on McDowell, right?
On McDowell.
Yeah.
It just seems very harsh to me. I'd love to break that scale down somehow. I don't know how to do that right off, but that's the thing that kind of concerns me with it. We've ultimately been trying to get rid of some of these big flat planes. Now they have, in my mind, they have met the requirements. I would just like to encourage them to take a look at more of the pedestrian scale of this building along McDowell, and as you're just driving in, to give it some excitement. We've seen some buildings as of recent that at least have some curves and some delineation and some overhangs and
Yeah.
and things going on at that pedestrian level, which I would encourage a little bit more thoughtfulness on that. So,
Yeah, I agree. I love the plaza side. I feel like that they're certainly achieving that on the plaza side, and the McDowell side, it appears to be an intentional move to create that vertical plane.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the plaza is the focus, and to some degree costs the McDowell side, even more so than the Hargett side. I do, and this is slightly beyond today's scope, but in thinking that this could be mirrored and then look to, does the same logic apply, and is that a good thing necessarily? And I don't know the answer to that.
On the other side of the block, on the western side of the block.
Yeah, and on McDowell, I mean, I think we are absolutely creating a canyon effect through this design on McDowell, and a wider streetscape is good, but and I don't want to penalize them for what they've pictured, but a planted area that is the amenity area doesn't necessarily fully trade for me in terms of the effect for the pedestrian experience, where the majority of the public are going to drive past it or walk past it, and it'll be a while yet before the interior plaza is the most accessed portion of it. I think one of my other feedback in an earlier round was around street level activation, challenging to do at a civic campus where there's security concerns. But in terms of making that a comfortable and connected, storefront, shopfront experience, and McDowell is a very challenging street to that end, but it does feel like a little bit of the backside of the building.
yeah, I think I agree that we're going to see that, we'll see this twice. We'll see this on this side and we'll see it on the other street. And so
Yeah.
it needs to be thought out. And I guess, as I say, I think it meets the intent mostly. I think really the only guns I have to stick to would be the plaza and the amenity area, which, I just don't feel is quite there yet. I'd love to see a little bit more thought on McDowell Street and how it relates to the pedestrian scale.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I'm not totally convinced you can't have your cake and eat it too, in terms of having a step back on McDowell and not ruining the entire design intent.
Very small.
Very small. Yeah.
Somewhere for the pigeons.
Well, there's a pretty good sized planter there right now, right? It's 5 feet or so deep. I mean,
On
on
the top of the
McDowell Street.
fenestration thing.
Along McDowell Street, if
On
if
McDowell.
I'm reading, if I was reading that right. I mean, which really, is that amenity or not?
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty high.
That would be a point of feedback for me. I don't, beyond the scope of today, but could more be done with that to make it more meaningful beyond just a planning area that is a collection for debris and other things?
Well,
How, if we wanted to, how would we be able to make that request to them that they consider incorporation of that step back in some way, while I guess maybe giving some leeway if it becomes structurally infeasible, cost prohibitive.
Are we suggesting a step back in lieu of the setback they're already proposing on the down?
well, they're meeting the setback on McDowell, right?
Yeah.
They're meeting the setback, but they have no step back. So,
I'm saying, are we suggesting that they go back to the drawing board and just focus on a setback?
I'm not suggesting that. I think I'm suggesting that you know, if they are going to do what they're planning to do with the building, that there's something
There's some combination
more
of both.
amenity, canopy, something more at the pedestrian scale. If it's something at the ground level with some site wall or whatever, and something going on other than just
And how does that?
planter and bike parking, and maybe a canopy or something to help break that scale down and make it more pedestrian friendly at that level.
And is it feasible for them to do that without impacting the space that they'll need for people working for the city?
I'll just say, some of the irony of this to me is that this is the civic campus where theoretically we're showcasing Raleigh's design, and we're, not being able to meet, then, I'm not saying we're not meeting the intent, but to meet it as designed is somewhat funny.
It is kind of funny.
And, to the constraints of the property lines, I mean, we're talking about an entire block that is controlled by the city. I understand phasing and the existing buildings constraints, but
I understand, I just also understand that this is, they're part of the city's desire to bring employees all under one roof. And if changing this design impacts their ability to do that, then what are we suggesting that is the alternative for those employees?
They could go higher. I mean, there's lots of things they could do. I mean, just like a private developer. I mean,
Sure.
you ask the same question for a private developer. I think,
And then what are the costs of that?
right,
Not knowing that that's not our,
right. I mean, that could be,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
but it is a little ironic that a city building can't meet its own city code. But that might say something either about the code or about something, but those are all different conversations. But, I mean, that's my only.
Any other thoughts? Any motions or proposals? Any ideas? So I think if we wanted to ask for this case to come back, I think it would either have to be very specifically because of McDowell Street not having a step back and the way that they're treating the design alternate in terms of number 2 in the findings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can't, I don't think we can really ask them to say that they have to have a step back, because that's why this is here. So it's really just, did they do a good enough job with number 2 in terms of changing the material and fenestration and ornamentation? And so what would be, what are we looking for if we want that? Or is it really just more of like a suggestion along with the approval?
I think I would support a suggestion
Yeah.
alongside the approval.
I don't really feel like the site is, or the design's lacking in amenity area. Obviously, the terraces don't necessarily count, but are definitely amenity area.
Don't count, yeah.
So that particular constraint on that side, I understand why it's part of the equation, but
Yeah, yeah.
they would need another alternate in that case.
For amenity area.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
And what you're suggesting is they get an alternate for amenity area and then create a step back instead of a setback.
maybe, I don't know that I'm
Yeah.
quite that far, but
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would our suggested further evaluation be? How do we put that in words?
I guess just hearing you all talk, I mean, I think, in my mind, they meet the intent of what the code is. So I would probably give a motion to approve with a suggestion that they take a good look at the McDowell Street side and the pedestrian scale and how it interacts with not only pedestrian but just visibility. Knowing that this is a highly visible building within our city and that it's going to be here for a long time.
Yeah.
But my motion would be to approve as noted.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of an iconic moment in view, even though the McDowell Street is a vehicle-centric corridor. There's going to be a lot of eyes on it, and I agree that it meets the findings of this design alternate. But also agree that there could be some additional study into how that pedestrian experience could be improved and the focal point of the view as you're coming into town. So I would second that motion if that was a motion that you made. All in favor?
Any other discussion?
Any other discussion?
Yeah, what is your suggestion? I guess I'm hearing two different things. If we could consolidate the suggestion, but knowing that it's not binding.
Yes.
So they've met the requirements.
They met the
you're just saying some
requirements.
suggestions and just be a little more specific. I'm hearing.
Well, we can only be so specific without
But you can only be so
without
specific
being
with that.
architects
I
on this
understand.
project, right? But the suggestion is to take a look at McDowell Street as within the pedestrian realm, to just take a good look at the McDowell Street side as far as it relates to the public realm.
Okay.
And the pedestrian realm, I guess, would be.
So just looking at the pedestrian integration on the McDowell Street side.
That's right.
Okay.
And the visual experience as a driver coming into McDowell Street.
Along with the visual experience along McDowell Street.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, as an iconic entry point for the city. And
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to add, living here, at least to me, bike parking and planted area do not necessarily an admitted area make. And we're going off of what we can see, and I don't want to penalize people for design that they've provided above what they're required to at this point in the process. But I agree with what was said of just, can that pedestrian experience be made more meaningful to the intent of this standard? And then the other thing I would say is, given the potential for future phases of this project to look to this design, that I don't think that this is necessarily the standard that's then set for the other two projects that could come down the line. The council chambers to me is what puts it over the edge.
yeah. And that's in terms of, specifically in terms of the step back that you're speaking. Yeah.
Should we confirm with the applicant that our somewhat vague request
Well,
is?
they're not required to do. I mean,
Yeah.
So
Or at least.
I think we're
yeah.
fine.
Okay.
It's a suggestion. If you just state it, whoever's going to make the motion, state it clearly what that suggestion is, just so they know. And as part
I
of the
keep
motion.
suggesting it, and then it gets added on to.
Yeah, it was getting added, so somebody needs to summarize.
Could I ask Ben or Hal to come on up to the podium for a second? Does that make sense to you, what we're trying to say? I mean, I think that's the most important part, is that you all are hearing what we're saying, and certainly you meet the 5 findings, but we're just trying to get at something here and just want to make sure that we're conveying it clearly.
So we're looking to further study the McDowell streetscape, the McDowell amenity area to better react to the pedestrian scale and the pedestrian experience. And I also heard the driver's experience as they're coming. 60 miles an hour on McDowell.
They better not be, but yes,
Yeah.
that's
So
correct.
3 blocks south.
I'd just maybe reiterate that, necessarily a planner isn't considered the best example of an amenity
Yeah.
pedestrians would experience on that side of the road
Mhm.
to enhance it, so.
Yep, we can look at alternate amenity options for that side of the street, and related but not unrelated. But you guys mentioned this setting a precedent for phase 2 and 3. For phase 2, given that the council chambers will be in phase 1, phase 2 is not constrained by that large open volume, kind of in the center of the program. So that should provide an opportunity for phase 2 to relate to our massing and building, but adjust as accordingly.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
All right.
That's good. Thank you.
We got somebody who's going to take a
So we have
stab
a
at
motion.
restating that, or maybe Corey, since you made the motion.
Yeah, do I need to restate that? Well, the motion is to approve it as presented. I don't know that the caveat is really going to help.
I don't
It's
think
not
we
binding.
need to, I don't think we need to
I think
include
they
that.
understand
That's
it.
fine.
So
And I don't think you do. It's
the
a
motion is to
suggestion.
approve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
That's fine.
that's fine.
The motion is to approve as presented.
I'd second that motion. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 If I may ask a clarification, so no friendly amendment or suggested condition was finalized? Thank you.
The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following the adoption of this decision. And that closes case DA 5/2022. We will now open the evidentiary hearing for item DA 8/2022. On today's agenda, I'd like to ask Casey Evans to introduce this hearing.
Hello again. As you mentioned, this is design alternate case DA-8-2022. The subject property is located at 6121 Mount Herman Road in northwest Raleigh, and that's generally north of the interchange between Highway 70 and Interstate 540. The property is zoned IX3 PK, that's Industrial Mixed Use District with a parkway frontage, and it's also located in the Airport Overlay District. The Swing Racket Project is a proposed indoor-outdoor sports complex containing multiple buildings and courts. The property has frontage along Mount Herman Road, and the two buildings involved with this request, let's see if you can see this cursor here, this larger indoor tennis operations office building, as well as this, what's labeled as a restaurant building here. The applicant is requesting 3 design alternates, all related to transparency requirements in UDO section 3.2.5F and section 1.5.9. They're requesting complete relief from the 20% ground story transparency requirement along the west side and along the southwest side of the indoor tennis and operations building fronting along Mount Herman Road. That was that larger building I pointed to on the previous slide. And also complete relief from the 20% ground story and 20% upper story transparency requirements along the west side of the restaurant building fronting along Mount Herman Road. Here's just a quick overview of the transparency requirements in the UDO and how the UDO defines how transparency is calculated in the IX district for a general building, which is what's proposed here. A minimum of 20% transparency is required along the ground story as well as on each upper story of the buildings where they're facing a public street. And again, we have the transparency findings here for your reference. happy to answer any questions you might have, and I can hand it over to the applicant.
Yeah, is this a standard use, would this be considered standard use in the IX zoning category?
I believe it is.
It is,
I can
okay.
double check that, though.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards.
Good afternoon, Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street. I am here today with John Jenkins of Swing Racket and Paddle, the applicant. We also have with us Siler Ramsmeyer of HH Architecture, as well as Alyssa Doler of HH Architecture, to make sure that we can answer any questions you may have today. I'd like to begin by requesting that all of our application and presentation materials be admitted to the record. Thank you. So, to begin with an orientation, you heard a little bit about this site. This site is actually owned by the City of Raleigh. It's been leased to the applicant in order to create not only a world-class recreational facility for our residents, but to create a truly unique, and I don't take that word lightly, a first of its kind national and international destination facility for racket sports competitors at the highest levels. You saw a quick introduction to the site plan. There's truly nothing like it today, and we'll dig into that a little bit as well. But what you see on your screen is just an orientation to the area. Zoomed out a little bit there on the left from what you saw previously. The site is 44 acres approximately, and as you can see in the aerial, that little notch there in the bottom left corner of the site, that is a city facility as well. And to continue the overview, this is the entire 44-acre site plan. We'll zoom in a little bit, but as you can see, there are facilities for really every kind of racket sport you've heard of and some that you haven't. The location of the building, so this orientation has turned. North is at the left-hand side of your screen. That's Mount Herman Road at the bottom. And to the back there is a creek, Sycamore Creek at the back there on the eastern side of the site. And to zoom in on the buildings that we'll be talking about today. So there on the left is the indoor tennis building. There's some office use in there as well. And the two facades at issue today are Facade A, that short facade along the roadway, and Facade B, the longer facade along the parking lot, and then over to the restaurant building where Facade C pertains to one of our requests today as well. This is simply an introduction to what indoor tennis facilities look like. This is, on the left side of your screen, this is at UNC Chapel Hill. On the right-hand side of your screen is the NC State facility as well. Sunlight is not an asset to this facility, and so you notice that there is not a lot of transparency to these buildings. Before diving into the specific request before you today, I'd like to focus on our more general topic, which is the transparency requirements under the UDO. So this slide gives you an overview of some general distances. We wanted to give you some context as to what the scale is here. So some dimensions have been added to this version of the slide, and you can see that closest facade, Facade A, is approximately 80 feet away from the roadway. At one point, it varies a little bit, but just for scale, that's the distance there for the closest facade. Facade B, not truly facing the roadway, but nearly perpendicular to it, and extends from something greater than 80 feet to 505 feet away from the roadway. Facade C, we're looking at close to 600 feet here. So 585 is that dimension that you see on your screen. So what is the intent of transparency? So the transparency requirements are intended to provide visual interest. It's applicable only to street-facing building facades, and it's for the benefit of pedestrians and building users. There is another requirement on this property, which is the parkway frontage. And you see on the right-hand side of your screen what that looks like. There's a minimum 50-foot wide, heavily landscaped buffer along all portions of the roadway frontage here. And you see the description at the bottom left of your screen that the parkway frontage provides a heavily landscaped buffer between the roadway and the adjacent development to ensure a continuous green corridor along the street right-of-way, which really introduces the question of how is this compatible with a transparency requirement on specifically the street-facing facades designed to provide visual interest for the pedestrian. At the top left of your screen is simply a bit more detail about the types of plantings required. It's the SHOD 1 standard there that's highlighted. It's a very intensive level of landscaping. This is the landscape plan for the project. And you see the actual landscaped areas highlighted in green there between that the indoor tennis facility and the street. I want to note that even though it isn't green, when you continue down south or to the right along Mount Herman Road, in front of that southernmost parking area, that's actually tree conservation area, extending that buffer even further. So the entire area is truly green in a very dense way, really blocking the view into this site, whether it's tree conservation or whether it's landscaping. And just to zoom in for a little bit better view of that site. And with that, I'll turn to our specific request today. So this is that facade A. This is that short end of the indoor tennis facility that is closest to Mount Herman Road. An overview of where that's located and a rendering showing how it relates to the landscaping in front of it. The request there is for complete relief from transparency requirements. Facade B, so this is facing the parking lot. This is the indoor tennis facility as well. And here you see that quite a bit of effort went into ensuring that this does not lack visual interest. This is like I said, a world-class facility designed to attract people from all over the country and the world, and it looks the part. So there's a little bit of office there in the right-hand end of the building as well. And just to zoom in on that rendering. With respect to facade C, I wanted to point out its location. So if you see where it is there at the corner of that, the other city-owned parcel that notches out there, and compare that to the topography. So we've changed orientations here, but right at that corner is the high point of the site, and that is not an accident. So the restaurant building is the social beating heart of this site. It provides facilities during the day for tennis players and turns into a restaurant at night as well. And as you see, there is a very significant drop-off in topography toward the back of the site, toward the east. And so, conservative estimate here, you're dropping at least 50 feet there, depending on how the grading works out. But looking down toward the creek, toward the Greenway area. There's a view of from that location looking toward the east. It's a little hard to tell the topography in a photograph. This is the proposed facade C. This is the facade facing that parking lot. So we're approximately 600 feet away from the roadway. We're behind 50 feet of landscaping across a large parking lot. And this is truly, by the time you get past all of those other facilities, this is kind of the back of the building. This is the parking side. This building is oriented toward the courts. And so here you see the city's Greenway plan showing up along that creek. This building will face that creek. And to the extent that there will be pedestrians in this area, I think you'll see them coming from the Greenway, more so than Mount Herman Road. In addition, so to look at what is it's hard to say whether it's behind or in front of the building at this point, but across from the parking, right? So on the other side of the building, you have many courts as you head down that slope, heading toward the creek, heading toward the Greenway. And this is a public area. This is publicly accessible. There is a walking path that connects to the Greenway. There are pickleball courts, padel courts, beach tennis courts, and an outdoor dining area in this area. So this is the orientation of the building. This is where you'd see the transparency. So to summarize, the proposed design alternates only have two standards to meet. One is that they are consistent with the intent of the transparency requirements. As we saw, those are to serve the pedestrian, and we believe that this building will accomplish that. Also, the impact is being minimized by the use of varied materials, by breaking up building massing, and certainly by extensive landscaping to offset that reduction in transparency. And we look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Are there any windows in the office area?
Yeah, so let's go to
I
that
don't really
slide.
see any on that one facade, but it could be that facade there.
Yeah, so there's a third story up there, and that is not part of our request today.
Okay. So the office area is all above. Is that the thing, or is it on all 3 levels?
I may want to turn to our architects on this one, see if is there office space below?
Do they need to be sworn
We'll need
in?
to swear them in,
Yeah,
yeah.
I got it. Before you begin, can you state for the record your name, address, and relation to the case?
Yes, my name is Siler Ransmeyer. I am with HH Architecture. We're at 1100 Dresser Court, 27609.
Okay. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can proceed.
So there are offices on the 3rd floor. There are also some offices on the 2nd.
Can you indicate in this rendering generally where those are?
Offices on the 3rd floor, and then offices on the 2nd.
And what is that material that's kind of checkerboarded in that square there? The yellow band on the top and right?
It's a metal panel.
It's a metal panel. Okay, so not transparency.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And on elevation A, I believe I saw that there was some curtain wall up on the upper section of that elevation. Can you speak to what's down below that? Yep. Oh, right there. Yep.
That's also metal, fiber cement, actually.
Okay.
And while you're on that image, Molly, or actually probably Molly, better question for Molly. Can you go back one slide? There we go. Okay, so you showed this picture with the pines. Those pines will not be a part of the proposed condition, correct? That's not tree conservation.
That's right, this is not a tree conservation area. This will be landscape.
Okay, so the next image is more contextual for it. It's new trees in front of the building. There won't be any existing trees in front of the building at this in the proposed condition.
I can't speak to that.
Okay. I don't know that it's zero, but I think it's not tree conservation, so
Yeah,
it's
okay.
not.
Thank you.
And sorry, is that in fact curtain wall up above the fiber cement panels?
It's not curtain wall, it is translucent panel.
Okay, I thought I saw it noted as CW in one of the previous images.
So for the tennis purposes, they actually prefer translucent natural light to complete transparency. It's also better for thermal performance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in this case, it's like a cow wall type
cow wall,
material,
yeah.
but we're not using a name brand, if you will.
So, have you designed facilities like this before?
We have.
You have. Okay. I'm just trying to get to the, the idea of transparency requirements is not just for pedestrians, but building occupants. And so trying to get clear on what these building occupants in this scenario, in this building right here, would benefit from the most in terms of the use that's being proposed.
What would they benefit from the most?
Yeah, related to transparency.
I believe that the driver on this project is clearly the indoor tennis function.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that the indoor occupants would benefit from not having clear transparency at the ground level, but to be naturally lit with materials, translucent materials such as the ones you're seeing here, but that you also see on other elevations, primarily the north elevation, which is not part of our case today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Why are we looking at facade B?
Yeah,
Is that a question for the
city
city staff? Or is that for you, Molly?
It's a great question.
It's greater than 90 degrees to the road, right? I mean, it's not facing the road. It's not even 90. It's greater. It looks like it's greater than 90 degrees from the road.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just wondering.
Really weird.
I don't know the answer to it. Do we have someone who's been involved? Okay. Alyssa Doler with HH Architecture was involved in these discussions.
Melissa, before you begin, please state your name for the record, address, and relation to the case.
Alyssa Doler with HH Architecture at 1100 Dresser Court.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You can proceed.
So I was not, I did not make the determination. I was involved in the early conversations. We went through a pre-application meeting, and the determination was made that that west end of the building that angles toward the street there, this piece of the facade over here, sorry, east end, is parallel enough that the whole facade would be part of this consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Learn something every day.
Any other questions at this point?
On that facade, the B facade, that long facade, I mean, is there opportunity to add a cow wall-esque type system up high to allow some natural light into the space? Is there an opportunity for something like that that would, as Adam was getting to, I think the occupants as well? I don't know what that material is, but.
So what's not shown in this rendering currently is that we are currently approaching that from the north elevation with a gracious amount of that translucent material. The design intent here was to show a movement pattern consistent with the swing brand.
Say that again.
It's to show a movement pattern consistent with the swing branding, sort of a bouncing ball.
Racket. And,
Got it.
Yeah, now I see that. That was just like, I'm with everyone on, why or why not this is part of it. But just in terms of, I see the rendering, but what exactly is being proposed with those aesthetic panels? Are those metal panels?
Where you see the
stringing of the racket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that is currently an EFIS material, I believe.
Yeah.
And it'll more or less look like that rendering. It's not a conceptual.
That is the intent.
Okay.
Do you have the floor plan for that eastern section of this available? No. What's happening behind the gray wall under the third story? I know you said there was a second story office back there. What else is behind that? Just trying to get at why that doesn't have any transparency, what the intent there is.
At the ground level, it's primarily storage.
Okay.
On the second level, there are some offices and meeting spaces, conference spaces.
And why, I guess, why no transparency in that scenario? Is that, I'm trying to figure out what, because it's not a part of the swing branded bouncy ball and racket. So why no transparency on that section?
That was the desire of the owner and their program functions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission at this time? All right, well, hearing none, I will invite any public that has come to speak on behalf of this case. Being none, I would like to move on past rebuttal, I think, and close this hearing for commission deliberation.
Do you have any closing?
Any thoughts? I think my main thought is related to this is that the gable side closest to the road, I understand that at some point there will be plenty of trees screening it, but for the first 20 years there will be basically nothing. Those trees aren't going to grow all that fast. And so that's quite a big view of, nothing for a while. And I don't know that that meets the intent of transparency requirements for pedestrians, even though there may not be all that many.
Yep. I think this is one of those cases that we don't see very often.
Yeah.
As somebody who plays in indoor tennis courts periodically, I can appreciate why you don't want that transparency. And quite frankly, it looks a whole lot better than the blow up bubbles at Raleigh Racket Club and other places. So I appreciate what they've done for that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think my thought is that I think Molly did a good job presenting this. I think the intent for the public realm is a little different in this case, being the distance that it is set back and with the conservation with the other tree buffers. I do appreciate the short term, but I think long term. With its location and how it's sited, I feel like that the presentation was clear why they don't meet it, and I can get behind that. I think.
Yeah.
I'm unclear as to why they need relief at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to open it back up and ask Molly? Molly, could you come back up? Did you hear Patrice's question?
I had a little trouble understanding. What was the question?
Asking, why is it that you need relief at the restaurant? I understand what you were saying about the views are on the other side of the building, but why is relief necessary?
Sure. A couple of reasons for that. I think number one is that is essentially back of house, given that the front is opening onto those public areas where the pedestrians will be. So there needs to be somewhere where the trash is happening. That's where the public restrooms will be. Things like that. Things that don't lend themselves to that kind of transparency. And given the standards that apply, meeting the intent of transparency, we felt that was the best place for that.
I think my only comment would be to echo what someone else said about transparency is not just for pedestrians, it's for the people that will be working and operating in that building. And
Sure, and I can respond by saying, that it's not as though there'll be a lack of transparency in the building. All buildings have a back of house somewhere. It's just a matter of where it is. And this particular standard only applies to street-facing facades, which is why that's what we're focused on today. But it will certainly be wide open to the public and to light.
Can you put it back to the site plan so people can see that?
Yeah. I was just going to ask, we understand that the transparency is only related to the street-facing facade, but if you're saying that there is plenty of other transparency for people in the building, because there's none on the street-facing facade, it'd be interesting to know where that is or see it, have some kind of discussion about how that's happening for the people that are in the building.
Sure. So one thing to note that you can see here, although I don't have an elevation of that side, you can see that there is, that's kind of the outdoor dining side. And so, it would be very unusual to see kind of a closed off section back there.
On the other side.
On the other side, right. This entire location was chosen to take advantage of that high point of the site, to take advantage of the view. So certainly that will be maximized.
So I think maybe what Patrice is getting at, and you can speak to it if you want, I think it probably makes sense that there's plenty of transparency on the other side of the building. I think the concern is that there is no transparency for the building occupants that are in the back of house rooms on the west side of the building.
So I understand that the use is there, and we can bring up some of our other witnesses here, but I understand that the uses there are public restrooms, private dining, there's a trash area. Have I covered everything? And a kitchen and storage.
Yeah.
okay.
How many square feet is that building?
We're going to want to turn to John Jenkins, Swing, Racket, and Paddle.
Before you begin, please state for your record your name, address in relation to the case.
Yes, sir. I'm John Jenkins. I'm a professional engineer with 33 years of experience in civil engineering and master planning and design. I am Chief Development Officer with Swing, Racket, and Paddle. I reside at 9616 Bartons Creek Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27615.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
So, specifically to the question related to the back of house, the restaurant, the square footage of the restaurant is approximately 23,500, 24,000 square feet.
So it'd be multiple restaurants within that space?
The restaurant, it's a multifunctional building, so it does have a restaurant. It's got a branded retail pro shop from a major sports brand that's coming to Raleigh. And it also has a rooftop bar and an event lounge and ping pong rooms and other outdoor rooftop bar, covered bar areas as well inside the building on the second floor, along with back of house, restaurant, kitchen, storage, coolers, etc.
So it is a two-story building?
It's a two-story building. Most of the back of house is on the south-facing end of the building, tucked behind the corner of the salt barn site, the City of Raleigh salt barn site, on that back corner. The entire north end, related to the question about transparency on the balance of the building, the entire north end of the building is just a glass cube open into the retail pro shop. As it wraps around to the east-facing side of the building, that's all overlooking the pickleball, or all the pickleball courts, along with the padel village and the beach tennis, and all of that is rooftop bar on the second floor and then glazing along the ground floor. I'd say approximately 75% of that would be glazing.
On the north side of that building? On the north side of that building?
On the east, on the north, and then along the east side of the building, facing up on the page in this case.
So are there elevations?
We have elevations more on the front side that have been developed. We've got some SketchUp models for the back of the building, or the call it the public facing side of the building. And all of that is free publicly. Molly mentioned that it's publicly accessible. There's a grand promenade that travels and bisects the heart of the campus into the grand lawn. The woodland park, as well as all of the pickleball and padel area, is open to the public for free to get access to for the comfort station and to partake in pickleball if you would like to stay and play.
Any other questions?
If I may respond to a question related to the indoor tennis. I've been engaged for at least 15 years of my career in sports, heavy sports facilities. Typically, the indoor tennis building is designed with just some translucent panels to get natural light. Functionally, a tennis player with the shadows cast by solar orientation inside the building, it's typically not something that we like to have across the courts with sunshine coming into the indoor tennis on the south and west facing side of the building. And then the material on the outside is to represent Roger Federer's first racket. That's what you see is the netting of the racket along that side, along with the Swings brand of the bouncing ball.
Could you speak to the design that on facade A that is taking place of the intent of transparency? Because it makes a lot of sense that you want that diffuse light and really don't need windows coming in there. But I think there's some concern about the blankness of that gable end of that.
That one.
I don't know, it could be there.
That one.
Yeah, there we go.
I
So
know
certainly,
we have a
yeah, certainly
translucent-
over the years, there will be plenty of trees there to kind of shade that, but that will be the street view.
let Siler.
All right, thank you.
And while he's walking down here, I'll just note that the standard that we've met here today is that the street-facing building facade uses architectural, artistic, or landscape treatments to create that visual interest. And so we felt that the 50-foot landscape buffer was our treatment here. There may be more to that.
I mean, that's essentially it. This was not intended to be a side of the building that would be experienced in great detail and so this is, for cost-effective reasons, a pre-engineered metal building. We've tried to use a variety of materials to provide some articulation and some natural light above a certain level that wouldn't affect the tennis player.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the basics of the design intent.
Thank you. Well, we can go ahead and close the hearing for discussion. Okay, any other thoughts, folks?
I think I'm comfortable with it. Dangerous to give a bunch of design professionals the backside of a building, so it would have been nice to see the beautiful side of the building too. But yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate Patricia's comment about building C, which I really wasn't thinking about a whole lot, but it is important. Even at the second floor, love to at least see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to comment on something if you can't see it. So it's hard for me to say, well, have you thought about this or that if there's nothing presented in front of us?
Yeah.
So that's my only concern. At least this other building we've kind of seen.
There is a rendering of that.
That's the backside of it was not in the present.
Could somebody, Molly, could you flip to the rendering of the back of the restaurant building?
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I think, again, typically we see plans, we see elevations, that way we can kind of know, as small as the ABC, when the ABC store came in front of us and we looked at the plans and we talked to them, hey, can you put some, even though it's not in the code required height of 12 feet, can you put some transom windows up there, right, to get some light into the space so it's a nicer experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Same kind of thing here. So that's my only comment for maybe future people that come, or when or if we decide they need to come back. But I think for the most part, I can get behind what they've.
Yeah, certainly I agree that there is probably an opportunity for transparency along that facade, and I understand that it's way, way back into the site, and so it's not quite really related to the intent, of the code, and so. Anyone want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following the adoption of the decision.
Thank you.
Hearing's closed. At this time, we're going to switch legal counsel. Okay.
Great job.
We will now open the evidentiary hearing for item DA 4, 2022 on today's agenda. I'd like to ask Casey Evans to introduce this hearing.
All right, the subject property for the case DA-4 2022 is located at 401 North Lane Street and 219 North Harrington Street. That's approximately where Lane Street intersects with North Harrington Street. The property is zoned downtown mixed use, maximum of 12 stories with the shop front frontage. The project is a proposed 8-story mixed-use building, including residential units. The property has frontage along Northwest Street on the west side, as well as North Harrington Street on the east. And then again, as you can see, the property or the proposed building encompasses the majority of the subject property. The applicant is requesting 5 design alternates, 1 related to transparency, 1 for cross-access, and 3 having to do with driveway spacing. So the first design alternate request is to the transparency requirements in UDO section 3.2.6F and section 1.5.9. They're requesting a reduction to the ground story transparency measured between 0 feet and 12 feet from the required 66% to a proposed 34%, and a reduction to the ground story transparency measured between 3 and 8 feet, which is 50% of the required 66%, so 33% required to a proposed 18%. And again, those requests are for the east side of the building, which is along North Harrington Street. And here again, just a summary of the UDO requirements. 66% is required for the ground story level of mixed-use buildings in the DX district, and just a note that in the urban frontage, such as the shop front frontage, at least 60% of the ground story windows have to provide views at least 8 feet into the building. So the next request is for design alternate to the cross-access requirements in UDO section 8.3.5D. They're requesting complete relief from providing cross-access between the subject property and the 2 parcels to the north, which are 406 North Lane Street. It's sort of that triangle parcel on the left side, and 301 North Harrington Street, which is fronts along North Harrington Street. Here are your findings for that section of the UDO for reference for your discussion. And I'll jump to the next requests, which are to the Raleigh Street Design Manual, section 9.5. They're requesting to reduce the 200-foot driveway spacing for 2 proposed driveways along for 1 proposed driveway and adjacent to 2 existing driveways along North Harrington Street side, and then 1 proposed driveway to an existing driveway along West Street. So you'll see here, they're proposing a spacing of approximately 97.9 feet along Herring Street between proposed driveway 1 and the existing driveway 2, which is to the north of the property. A proposed spacing of approximately 138.5 feet also along Harrington Street between proposed driveway 1 and existing driveway 1, which is to the south. And then a reduced spacing of approximately 163.9 feet between the proposed driveway 2 onto Northwest Street and existing driveway 3 along West Street. And again, just the findings here for your deliberation. And with that, I will answer any questions if you have them, or hand it off to our transportation staff, which is also here, and the applicant.
Thank you, Casey. Does anybody have any questions for Casey? Hearing none, we will now ask the applicant to present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. Before you begin, please state for the record your name, address, and relation to the case.
I'm Mark Frederick with Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein at 301 Fayetteville Street. I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
Okay.
Oh, good evening. I'm Mark Frederick, again with Parker Poe. I'll start off by asking that our application, presentation, case report, and supporting materials be accepted into the record. So these design alternates relate to the proposed development of two parcels at 401 West Lane Street and 219 North Harrington Street. We're currently going through ASR, and there have been some challenging aspects to designing this building based on the specific characteristics of the site. So this slide shows the site's current conditions and the surrounding area for context. Northwest Street is on the west and North Harrington Street is on the east. The site has very limited street frontage just on those two sides. The Link Apartments are to the south, and then there are two parcels owned by Go Triangle to the north, currently used for surface parking with access onto North Harrington Street. The site is zone DX12 shopfront frontage. It is only 0.91 acres in area. Briefly on this slide as well, the topography of the site slopes from east to west. So from North Harrington down to Northwest Street, there's about a 10-foot drop. And to better illustrate that, we've included the north elevation, which has Northwest Street on the right side of the screen and North Harrington Street on the left side of the screen. The first two floors of the building are the parking garage. They have access, there's two access points, one on Northwest Street, one on North Harrington Street. They are on different levels though due to that topography. And it is a split level garage, so there's the traffic is dispersed equally on both streets. And then the remaining 6 levels are the residential units with a amenity courtyard in the center that's open on the 3rd floor facing north. So the design alternates we're requesting today, the first one is for transparency on that North Harrington Street side. The limited amount of street frontage we have really restricted the amount of space we had for transparency, and also include the required utility and service areas. The second and third requests are for the cross access to the north. Our parking deck is the first 2 stories, so providing additional access points to those 2 parcels that are used for surface parking. We're requesting relief from that. And then the final 3 are for driveway spacing. In the urban setting that this site is, there's quite a lot of existing driveway cuts that we need relief from. So at this point, I'll ask our engineer to come up and explain these in more detail.
Before you begin, please state for the record your name, address in relation to the case.
Hey, good afternoon. Michael Van Pran. I'm a landscape architect with McAdams, and I've been helping to plan the site out.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can proceed.
So what this elevation doesn't show is the western elevation on northwest side. That's where we're currently proposing most of the residential uses, the leasing, the lobby, bike repair, those types of facilities associated with the residential uses. The Harrington side is the eastern facade, and that's where the mixed-use component of the building comes in. On this screen, it's kind of plan right of the parking deck entrance. And so we have tried to maximize the transparency for this eastern facade. We got a zoning interpretation that the residential uses do not need to meet the transparency requirements, but we've still designed it to satisfy the intent of a very high 66% transparency on the western side, but the eastern side we are not able to, primarily because this is where the back of house services are proposed. Plan west, those the trash, the riser rooms, and plan east is the water room. So in those particular areas, we aren't able to meet the transparency requirements, hence why we're asking for about 50% reduction. I will go to the next slide. What you see before you is our proposed condition to try and ameliorate that. Plan West, we are proposing essentially evergreen plant material, both evergreen shrubs and then some vertical upright plant material. And then also we're looking at some type of green screen as well to try and help mitigate that the blank wall and lack of transparency there. And we're kind of continuing that streetscape up Harrington Street to ultimately provide that kind of close to the water room as well. So that's all transparency. Should I keep going? So I'll switch to the next design alternate as it relates to cross access. The Links apartments are to the south there, as well as a utility provider as well. And so the cross access is applied to both of those two parcels as well. As Mark mentioned, there is 10 foot of grade change east to west of the site. And so providing that additional access into either the first or second floor of the parking deck is not frankly feasible. And as Mark referenced, it is go triangle, and don't see a lot of value in routing those workers and temp parking to go through a residential parking structure primarily. So I would say that the topographic constraints and the fact that they be accessing a parking deck prohibits strict adherence to the UDO regulations. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the actual eastern parcel would stub into what is part of the mixed-use building itself, not actually into the parking deck. So just another constraint there. And then lastly, I'll pivot to the driveway spacing request. This is in downtown with very small blocks. You can see that the western block is approximately 181 feet. The eastern side is approximately 190 linear feet. So the parcel, by and large, is less than 200 linear feet in total, making any driveway cut infeasible with the UDO regulations. The existing railroad on West Street, we're trying to propose the parking deck entrance as far south as we can to ensure proper vehicular stacking. On the eastern side, we are trying to essentially split it midway to have equal driveway spacings from the north, and to the south there, the intent is to provide safe vehicular access with the current blocks and current driveway configurations. So we believe that the design alternate is consistent with the intent of the transparency request in providing architectural and landscape mitigations in lieu of those transparency requirements, and utilizes architectural and landscape treatments. I did mention we're also proposing some streetscape elements, including benches, trash receptacles, and those types of pedestrian elements in addition to the landscaping. For the blocks, lots, and access, we do believe it's consistent with the intent of the sections there before you. Do not believe it increases congestion or compromises safety. It does not conflict with the approved or built roadway construction projects adjacent to or in vicinity of the site. And it's reasonable given the existing physical, environmental, and topographic constraints, and compliance would not meaningfully improve the connectivity requirements. I won't read all of these before you today, but we don't believe that it creates any additional maintenance responsibilities for the city, does not increase congestion or compromise vehicular or pedestrian safety. It has been designed by professional engineers, architects, and landscape architects, and it will not adversely impact stormwater collection. There is under the parking deck under the west side, there's an underground facility as well that will treat the stormwater requirements. And we believe it's reasonable given the existing physical constraints of the site. Awesome. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. I'd like to ask if transportation could come on up and answer any questions we may have. Sure. Could you please state your name and...
Sure. Kevin Kidd, One Exchange Plaza, 27602. Kevin Kidd with the Transportation Department. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You're familiar with this case, I assume?
I am.
Okay. Do you have any concerns regarding this project as is relevant to the case?
I don't.
You don't? And you all have worked in conjunction with the applicants?
We have. The applicants made several efforts to utilize best practices.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Specifically, as it concerns the driveway spacing, does this proposal create any operational or safety issues that you can speak to?
There are none. There was a lot taken into account in that location.
Mhm.
So there's none with where it's shown currently.
Okay. And do you feel like there's any other safer scenario that you can imagine for this proposed driveway spacing and parking deck scenario?
I think they've maximized safety with this. They took into account the buffered bike lane, the spacing from the parking area, the triangle transit where folks park, and solid waste was implemented in some of the design to get that offsite off the bike lane and with the driveway location. So I think it's been maximized.
That's great. Appreciate that. Does anybody else have any questions for Kevin? I don't know, this may be for the applicant or you, but does anybody have any idea what Go Triangle is planning for that property, or what they would ideally be doing with that property as it relates to this project?
It's a good question. Obviously, the rail is a big focus area. I don't believe that parcel is directly related to the project. This is in a quiet zone, if you will. That was discussed early on with the applicant and the developer, so they are aware. But there was a look into it, but there was no detailed information. If you're asking about a stop or something along those lines,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything like that.
And someone approached Go Triangle as a part of this project or in preparation?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure exactly. I do know the quiet zone was a very key element that went out on my feet here, right? But they were made aware. I would hope they were aware of the project, but certainly I can speak with the case planner and have them follow back up. Community follow up from there or not.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's supposed to happen.
Does that mean, does this mean we should end the meeting? We're getting played out.
I got a question for the applicant or Kevin. So I believe it was pictured that there's a loading zone that the curb juts in, and so that's in reference to the buffered bike lane as the means to allow that curbside access.
Yeah, so we actually removed a driveway cut and included that instead, just to avoid another driveway cut. So that'll be used for the servicing of the building. Yeah.
So the vertical separation for the bike lane would stop to allow for vehicles to access.
So initially, the developer had proposed a driveway on the far end of the building. There was some driveway conflict there, and we looked at the buffered bike lane. There's also a move-in component to this, obviously being residential. The developer's got a very detailed plan for that. And in lieu of creating another driveway for vehicles backing in and blocking the sidewalk potentially when ramps come down, they went ahead and worked with us, being transportation, solid waste, to look at a potential combined use, if you will. So you would have a move-in availability. There's also commercial loading across the street. And when not in use, that could be a potential location to put rollout carts where it's not in the buffered bike lane. So that's largely the intent there. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Question or two for the applicant. Does the building twist slightly from the plane of the building to the south? Or is that just the way it looks on the map?
No, it does not.
Okay. Yeah.
Does look like it does.
It just looked like it on the design, but that could just be the map. Is there any parking provided for the office retail space? The parking, the structured parking?
I think it's
so with the removal of the minimum parking requirements, we did park it to a market rate for the residential units, and Do you know if there's? I believe that there are. Yeah, there would be parking spaces in there for the amenities, or not the amenity, the commercial and office space. Yes.
Going back to the transparency, I see you've got the main electrical room, trash room. There's some other sort of back of house spaces there behind, particularly the wall on the left hand side of the images that I'm looking at, which would be the south side of Harrington Street. Yep, one back. Yeah, up the upper left-hand corner, we see the main electrical room, the trash room. Can you speak to what, if any, efforts were made to look to place those in a different location that would have allowed you to have some transparency in that area?
Yeah. So originally, a lot of these parts of the building were actually located on the northern side of the Harrington Street frontage, but again, that would have, and we could have increased the transparency with that driveway cut, but again, we would have had to, that would have required a vehicle entering or exiting backwards. It would have been a little more efficient for the building, but it would have included another driveway cut and another design alternate.
What is a water room? I've never heard it called a water room. Is that the treatment for the pool? Is that, what is that? Is it?
That's a very good question.
So typically, in my experience, I've seen that as like where your backflow preventer is. It may be where your recirculating pump for the residential units are.
Okay. Yeah, I've just never heard it called a water room before. European something.
Any other questions? I just have one question, I think, for Michael. Could you just speak a little bit to the details of the green wall that we're showing on the elevation on the North Harrington streetscape?
Absolutely. So I think the intent is for it to be just a vertical screen. I think the one on the side where it has the brick veneer is a little misleading. I don't think the intent is to physically attach it to the building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would just be a standalone structure that the vines would climb up.
Separate from the building?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, but I appreciate the level of detail that's provided here.
Yeah. Yeah. Hearing no other questions, I'll like to close this hearing for deliberation. Or with the public? Yeah. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak as relates to this case? Hearing none, I'd like to close this hearing for deliberation with the commission. Any thoughts?
I don't think any question about driveway spacing.
Yeah, I was going to say. We could take the easy one, which is driveway spacing.
What was the third request?
Transparency.
And cross-access to me also seems pretty straightforward here.
Do you have any idea what Go Triangle? Is that just owning it to own it?
I don't know that it's relevant to this.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Cool. Good call. So it seems like the only thing that we probably need have any much to say about is transparency. And yeah, anybody have any thoughts about it?
I think they've done a good job. using landscape and other ways to treat that area, I don't have any problem with that. I think
Yeah.
they've done a great job. So
Yeah,
I appreciate
agree.
that, and I appreciate the plan and elevation together.
Yes.
I concur with that. I really appreciate the attention to provide all of the details here and clearly try and address, I guess, to the landscape architect. My only question would be in terms of, in practice, does this function as it's designed?
The landscape. I think this is pretty good candidate as a landscape architect. Seems like a pretty good candidate for working without, I mean, really any level of detail. I just think totally still conceptual, but it seems like it's heading in the right direction.
Have something similar to that screening at the Publix.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to recall, I guess it's working if I don't notice the
Nice.
the
The
lack
big blank
of
wall.
transparency on that building, yeah.
Yeah. The in my experience, the ability for these to work or not, it happens at the construction document and the build level. And it's so, I think at this point, all we can say is, gosh, I hope this works. Looks like it would be nice if it did.
The alternative being what, a mural or decorative metal screen. I appreciate seeing this as some variety from what we see. So
Yeah. And it fits the residential context, I think, pretty well. And off urban, but off-street urban. Okay. Any other comments? I'd make a motion to approve as presented.
A second.
This is for all.
Yeah, I think we can lump them. It sounds like we can lump them all
I'm
together.
fine with that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Someone seconded that, right?
What's that?
Someone seconded your motion, right?
I did.
Yeah, Marcus did, yeah.
Thank you.
The commission's written commission will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following adoption of the decision. Thanks to the applicant. All right. We've got our last case of the evening. We will now open the evidentiary hearing for item DA 6, 2022 on today's agenda. And again, I'd like to ask Casey Evans to introduce this hearing.
Thank you. I'll just say that it's a live musical performance happening out side of the chamber. So that's what you're hearing in the background.
Oh, wow. Oh, it's not on the speakers.
No, it's live musicians. So
Oh my God.
just FYI.
Should we clap?
It's amazing.
Okay, so as you said, the next case is design alternate DA-6-2022. The property is located at 6450 Glenwood Avenue at the corner of Glenwood Avenue and Pleasant Valley Road. The property is zoned CX3PL, which is the commercial mixed-use district and the parking limited frontage. The American Pride Express Car Wash project, as you might guess, is a proposed car wash facility. It has frontage along Glenwood Avenue to the southwest and along Pleasant Valley Road to the northwest. The applicant is requesting 6 design alternates. 2 are related to build to, 2 are related to driveway spacing, and the last 2 are to do with driveway distance to an intersection. So as I said, the first 2 design alternates are related to build to. They're requesting, which is UDO section 3.4.5C and section 1.5.6. They're requesting reduction to the primary street build to along Pleasant Valley Road from 50% to proposed 42%, and a reduction to the primary street build to along Glenwood Avenue from 50% to 18%. Build to is the amount of site frontage that must contain a principal building facade in order to create a defined street edge. Then the parking limited frontage we have at this property, the minimum build to of 50% is required, and that's between the minimum building setback, which in this case is 5 feet, and 100 feet. So that 5 to 100 feet is the build-to range on the property. We have your build-to findings for reference. The next two requests are to the driveway spacing requirements set forth in UDO section 8.3.5. They're requesting to reduce the minimum 300-foot driveway spacing to a proposed 183 feet between the proposed driveway onto Pleasant Valley Road and an existing driveway that's adjacent to on the adjacent property at 4203 Pleasant Valley Road. And they're also requesting to reduce the minimum 300-foot driveway spacing to a proposed 155 feet between the proposed driveway onto Glenwood Avenue and an existing driveway on the adjacent property at 6404 Glenwood Avenue. And lastly, they're requesting 2 design alternates from the Raleigh Street Design Manual, section 9.5 for driveway distance from an intersection. The applicant is proposing a driveway onto Glenwood Avenue that is located 176 feet from the intersection of Glenwood Avenue and Pleasant Valley Road in lieu of the minimum required 300 feet. And then also a proposed driveway onto Pleasant Valley Road located 217 feet from the intersection of Glenwood Avenue and Pleasant Valley Road in lieu of the minimum required 300 feet. Here again, you have 7 findings related to design alternates to the Raleigh Street Design Manual, having to do with things like congestion, safety, maintenance, reasonableness. You've seen these before. I'm here if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will hand it off. And again, obviously, we have Kevin Kidd with Transportation here to answer transportation-specific questions.
Thank you, Casey. The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards.
Thank you.
Please,
Good evening.
before you begin, please state your name for the record and address in relation to the case.
Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street, attorney for the applicant. I'm here this evening with Chris Stallings from the applicant American Pride, as well as John Frazier, FLM Engineering, and Reinald Stevenson, Ramey Kemp, our traffic engineer. I'd like to request that all of our application and presentation materials be admitted to the record. So I've started with orientation on your screen here. There are 2 existing buildings on the site. You can see kind of where the red highlight is, and then the building behind it along Pleasant Valley Road. There's the existing car wash on the site. The plan is to replace this building with a new car wash. Oops. And this is the view from Pleasant Valley Road, showing both buildings. Moving to the renderings of the proposed car wash, this is the side of the building along Glenwood Avenue. I want to bring your attention to the walls extending along the sides of the building. We'll come back to those. And this is the view essentially from the corner of Pleasant Valley and Glenwood. So to get an overview of the site plan, as all of you know, a car wash building is inherently sort of a vertical building, a long, skinny sort of use as you sort of progress through the washing facilities. And the lot mirrors that shape, right? So the building is proposed to be aligned with that shape as well. As you also know, this type of use requires circulation that makes sense, circulation that is safe and easy to understand, and that makes sense here. I actually want to go back to here to show the existing condition. Along the 2 major streets of Glenwood and Pleasant Valley, there are 4 access points. And the proposed site plan proposes just 1 on each of those frontages, and particularly on the Glenwood Avenue side, that being a right-in only. So very much an improvement over the existing situation, and clear access to the car wash itself. So to jump into the requests, you've just heard these, so I won't dwell on these, but this image just highlights kind of what those actual dimensions are if we need to come back to these at any point. This is the build to image. So what we can see is that along the Pleasant Valley roadside, that's the long side of the building, given the circulation needs, it still doesn't quite meet that 50% standard. The request is for 42% frontage occupied here. And on the Glenwood Avenue side, although the request is much smaller at 18%, if that wall were included as part of that building wall, it actually would meet the standard. So it would extend to that full 50% that's required along that frontage. Given the inherent shape of a car wash, it simply isn't possible to accomplish both of these requirements. So I know you are very used to seeing these two requests go together, which is the distance of our driveway from the next driveway together with our distance of the driveway to the intersection. On both of these major frontages, there is not enough room to meet both requirements. And so, as frequently happens, you end up sort of choosing a spot in the middle, and you need design alternates on both sides of that driveway. So, although we're going from 2 along each frontage to 1 driveway along each frontage, those still cannot possibly meet both standards of being 300 feet away from both the intersection and the closest driveway existing on the adjacent sites. And here you see that distance along Glenwood, that 155 feet to the next driveway, and on Pleasant Valley Road, it's 183 feet to that next driveway. And then moving into the image showing those converse measurements going up to the intersections, particularly in Glenwood where it's shorter than on Pleasant Valley. We feel that's being addressed with that right-in entrance. This is something the applicant worked with staff on extensively over a long period of time to arrive at this solution. So there was much discussion, and we understand that that staff was satisfied with this. I would obviously invite you to speak with them. I'm sure you'll hear from them as well. This request remains an improvement over the current situation, a rather dramatic improvement, providing for safe access, both ingress and egress along both frontages, while maintaining the necessary circulation for this particular use. And we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this time for Molly?
Does the exit onto Pleasant Valley Road allow for both left and right-hand turns?
Yes.
And I guess, can you, if you turned right on to Glenwood from the intersection before the right-in only, can you speak to that access?
So let's go back to
Thank you.
the current situation. So there's a median in Glenwood Avenue at that location.
I guess he's asking where Taco Bell is. Mm-hmm. There's an access point before Taco Bell. Is that an access point? Does this have cross access?
Oh, I'm sorry.
To that driveway where Taco Bell.
To the back, yes, there's a right to use that.
Okay. So, in that sense, there's 2 entrances off of Glenwood because with the cross access agreement with the Taco Bell. Is that right? No.
I'm sorry, there are 2 entrances off of
Is there currently cross-access between the Taco Bell and the Bunky's property?
I don't know that Taco Bell controls that.
Or is that a public road?
This is what we're looking at, right?
Yes, that's right. That road.
Is that a road, or is that a part of Taco Bell?
Before you begin,
private drive, or what is that?
Before you begin, please state for the record your name, address in relation to the case.
My name is Chris Stallings. The address is 2701 East Millbrook Road in Raleigh. And my relation to the case is I represent the owner as the owner.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
So to the question, is there cross-access between the Taco Bell lot specifically and the existing Bunky's lot? There is not. There's actually a pretty substantial grade change that goes between the 2 lots that requires a retaining wall right on the line. And that retaining wall is approximately 6 or 7 feet tall.
Yeah, Chris, I think that the question was more about the road that,
So
whatever
that
road.
is a private access driveway.
Yeah, okay.
and that access driveway goes from Glenwood over to Pleasant Valley Road. That is correct.
And there's access easement for either one of these
There is a
properties.
recorded access easement for that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the driveway, the proposed driveway is in alignment with the current on Pleasant Valley, is that correct? It looks like it's in the same location, is that correct?
John?
The one.
This driveway access here.
Before you begin, please state for the record your name, address in relation to the case.
Sure. John Frazier, FLM Engineering, representing the owner, 8951 Harvest Oak Drive, Suite 205, Raleigh. Yes, that's generally in the exact
Do
same
you swear
location.
or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, the driveway is generally in the same location as the current driveway.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions at this time? Hearing none, I'd like to ask Kevin Kidd to come up, or Transportation to come up and take any questions we may have. You've already introduced yourself. I think we can just move forward. Do you have any concerns regarding this project as it relates to this case?
We've worked diligently with Mr. Stallings, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Stevenson to get to where we are today. There's been significant improvements from where we were. There was a lot of discussion on Glenwood Avenue. They previously showed a right-in, right-out, and they got to a right-in only, which we found to be very much an increase in safety to reduce a weave movement. So I just wanted to focus on Glenwood Avenue at first, yes. We've talked a lot about Pleasant Valley Road. As far as the access drive you're discussing, yes, that's an existing access drive. It's not currently connected to the existing Bunkie site, right? Long-term it would, and it's their intent to use that to some degree. Where we're at today, from where we're at when we started, we feel like is a safer design.
Okay. Does what they're proposing create any operational or safety issues that you can speak to?
No, there's no safety issues per se. There's a lot we talked about with the circulation around the site, what to do with the Pleasant Valley driveway that currently exists. There's a slight shift there to get more around the median. But no, as I understand, the developer is aware that the cross access will also be utilized for his site, not blocked off. So pedestrians and drivers alike have that ability to go through there. So hopefully that answers your question.
Can I ask a more specific question about the entry onto Pleasant Valley? My experience at this intersection is as you come out of the shopping center that's across the street and you come up to that exit road, it's very difficult to make a left turn out of the Walmart shopping center that's on the other side.
I know you're right. Yes.
And because traffic typically backs up from that left turn lane, that's why I asked the question earlier about whether left turn out of this property onto Pleasant Valley, what was the intention? Do you have any safety concerns related to that?
As currently constituted, it is what we would say a full access. The biggest look we had initially, or one of the big looks, is that we did not want a through movement all the way across Pleasant Valley into the car wash.
Yeah.
That's one of the items we looked out for. We did discuss right in, right out. We did not make that a requirement at the time because there is a cross access driveway around, but it is a full movement. Driver behavior is such that you hope they all yield in what they're at. We nor DOT took the tack to restrict that to a limited access driveway. So that's kind of the latest on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Can you describe the difference between a full movement and a limited access driveway?
Sure. Limited access, when like right in, right out, instead of a full movement where there's through, left, right, there's actually a left turn into this if you're coming from, I guess you'd be coming southbound on Pleasant Valley. There's the left turn there. So you'd be limiting at least one or more movements.
Okay, I see.
Not to be confused with controlled access, like you'd see on a highway. So this is a separate item altogether.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you feel like the left turn access across the street, the fact that they're not aligned in terms of the exit and the
Right.
combination of the two left turn movements is...
There is the potential for a left over there in conflict, yes.
The left turn the left turn that actually exists right now onto Pleasant Valley and on the other side.
Right, and a left turning movement over to Glenwood Avenue, I think is what you're asking me from this site.
Yeah, so the two left-hand motions would be at conflict to each other, given that they're not
There is a
perpendicularly
moment in
aligned.
time where those vehicles could occupy the same space. Yes.
And there's sufficient closeness to the intersection and volume at that intersection where there's high potential for, what's the term? The go-ahead.
Oh, yeah.
The
Where
when-
we have to turn into the middle of a stacking.
Right, where sometimes motorists will allow people to turn.
Courtesy gap.
That's what.
Right.
Thank you.
So that would be a little more difficult here. But yes, there is the potential for left turns to conflict with one another in that location.
Probably unrelated to this case, but to your knowledge, are there any? I don't know if Pleasant Valley is a city or DOT maintained.
Pleasant Valley City.
Is city. Are there any plans for modification to that median that helps create that condition?
I certainly wouldn't see it going away. I don't know of any plans to extend it further at this point. I can tell you what we do have planned for this year on Pleasant Valley is a resurfacing of that road. There are times with resurfacing we'll make some modifications. It's not always typical with medians and those kind of things.
Yep.
Typically, like we like to work in there is maybe transition plans to better improve ADA facilities, sidewalks. That's something that happened here. So, but the resurfacing, I'm not aware of any modifications to the median.
Okay. It seems like bringing it towards Glenwood Avenue would help alleviate some of that potential conflict with left. And again, I think I'm getting off of the subject here a little bit, but
It sounds like you're on the operational aspect. When I look at that, the biggest thing that I see, we all drive every day, so we're all to some degree subject matter experts in transportation, just knowing human behavior, is you don't want a car going across there on 5 lanes of traffic at, would we say, 180 feet from the intersection or whatever it is. So that was the main focus of the review, and we worked with Mr. Frazier to look at that driveway when shifted, that it doesn't enhance that ability for somebody to shoot all the way across 5 lanes.
But would you agree that with the driveway in that same location as it is, generally, a driver could still do that?
It would be a weave.
Because of the median?
Right.
Yeah.
It would be a slight weave to it. I don't know if the applicant wishes to move this over to the site plan, maybe that would help to some degree.
Yeah.
Or however.
Holly, could you move flip to there? Oh, you got it? Okay.
Holly, you mind if I just try to get to the site plan? Right, so you can see there's a slight shift in the driveway. It's the left turn movement around. I do know that they took a look, there was at least some trip generation looked at, if I recall correctly. Mr. Frazier could speak to that, on where they were looking at their trips and how they were going to operate through the site.
Okay.
But if you look at this slide versus the one that was the aerial view as currently constituted, it's a slight shift to the right.
Further away from Glenwood. Yeah.
But I think what I hear you saying is there's already this is not an ideal situation as it exists today, but I don't think that this case in front of us makes that situation worse. Is that a fair statement?
Well, you'd have to compare trip generation from when it was a bank before versus a car wash in peak hours. There is the potential there's more trips there, but again, that could be somewhat anecdotal, right? So that's why I'm very careful with how I'm answering your questions. I want to be factual in all of these. So getting some of the trip generation information from Mr. Frazier may help with some of this information. Certainly they do have the cross accessibility to the rear of the site to get around. I surmise the developer may speak to some operational concerns with his business when that comes up. I'm just mentioning that because that's something that came up during the course of our conversations over the past, say, 6 to 9 months working through this.
I think you guys are hitting on exactly what my main concern is that, that left-hand turn out, which you had a slight weave, but you could make it before, is only encouraging it a little bit more, which is probably not in my, I'm just an architect. I don't claim to be a site engineer, but it seems to me that it encourages a left-hand turn even more, which I feel is an unsafe movement in this location. Now, if there was not a cross-access option further up, I would consider a little more. But since there is that option, I would love to hear from the applicant a little bit more on how this may affect their business. But it does concern me as a safety.
I agree. Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions for Kevin at this point? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Molly, it sounds like maybe we would like to hear a little bit more about that driveway and the trip generation that Kevin was talking about.
Right, and we do have with us Reinald Stevenson, the traffic engineer, who can best address that. But while he works his way down here, I did want to go back to the standards that we're working to meet here. And one of them is that the design alternate, so the change in location, not the overall use, not sort of everything that's going on the site, but the design alternate requested is consistent with the intent, which is to provide a means for safe, efficient, and convenient vehicular and pedestrian access. So, as you've heard, this was a long process, a long negotiation with staff, working to balance all of those things. So certainly users will have a couple of options depending on time of day and how the balance between these factors may vary by time of day. So something to consider. Also, the second standard is that the design alternate, so again, the location of the driveway, does not increase congestion or compromise safety. From our current situation, I think we've heard that is not the case. So whether there's additional trip generation from everything else going on the site, it's not a result of the location of the driveway, which is the request in front of us. But with that, we'll see if Reinhold can address these questions.
Before you begin, please state for the record your name and address in relation to the case.
Reinald Stevenson with Ramey Kemp Associates, 5808 Farrington Place in Raleigh, 27609. I'm the traffic engineer for the project.
Okay, thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed. I think we just, if you can tell us about trip generation in the traffic study you did for this, that would be helpful.
Sure, yeah. I definitely want to hit on a couple things too, but as far as trip generation goes, the site is projected or would be projected to generate about just over 60 trips, between 60 and 70 cars in the heaviest time of weekday, which is in the evening. And about half of those are coming in, half are coming out in an hour, which makes sense. I mean, you typically pull in, get your car washed, you're kind of leaving in the same hour. It's not a long stay, place. Mm-hmm. So there's roughly 30 to 35 visitors, if you will, coming in there in the heaviest hour. So that's about one every 2 minutes. and the heaviest time for this particular use is on a Saturday when that traffic's about doubled. So you're in the order of magnitude of 120, maybe trips in an hour. About half of those are coming. Like I said, half of them are coming in, half are coming out. So you got about 60 to 65 visitors or customers in 1 hour during the very heaviest time. So that's about one customer per minute. Typically, on a Saturday, the traffic's a little bit lower on these roadways. It doesn't peak quite as much as it does on the weekday. When we all know in the morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour, the traffic's very heavy, and then during other times of the day, it can still be busy, but it's not quite as congested. I think one thing to point out is that if we go back to all those driveways we saw in the current condition, I mean, this is a dramatic improvement, from that. Dramatic improvement from what's there today. As you heard kind of mentioned earlier, this allows for folks to turn right, out of here and maybe weave over, across, Glenwood. And, as Kevin pointed out, there was lots of discussion about the access on Glenwood, and making that a right-in only was determined to be the best access plan for this. The other thing I'd like to point out about the driveway that we're discussing on Pleasant Valley is that I think you have to be careful with what you do there, because if you line that driveway up to try to prevent people from turning left out of there, you can sort of have some unintended consequences, of people trying to go swing out and go around the island and that's even a worse, situation. So I think what we're looking at is that trying to compare this to what's there and has been there, this is a better situation for sure. And at least to my knowledge, and some very limited look at it, we're not aware of any significant safety crash issues that have happened here at these driveways previously. So when you're making the situation better, it just stands to reason that it's going to operate better than it did before. So
thank you. In your professional opinion, what can you tell me the difference between the kind of normal visits for a bank and normal visits that you just described? Just sticking on that trip generation difference between existing and proposed.
Sure, that's a great question. I don't recall exactly how big the bank was, but I would say that the banks typically would generate more traffic than a car wash, and I would say probably back when the bank was in operation, it generated more. And now I think over the years, the last several years, there's been a lot of online banking, so the trip's gone down for banks a little bit. But I would say it probably still is fairly comparable to this. This car wash is going to generate more traffic on a Saturday, clearly, than a bank would. But I would say it's pretty comparable. But back when the bank was in operation, it was generating more traffic than this.
Okay. And then sticking on the trip generation, is that you said there's a Walmart on the other side? So that's probably going to get weekend use as well, right? And what kind of trip generation does a Walmart? Can you speak to that? I don't even know how to form that question.
Well,
but, trying to just figure out what this dynamic is with the number of cars coming out in the busiest times.
And so I mentioned that Walmart, and you're probably going to go to this as well. That's not the only exit.
Yeah, right.
From it, there are at least
plenty of others.
I think there's 3 other from it.
Yeah.
Well, there are uses out here that are going to be busy on a Saturday. I mean, on a weekend. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think what we would see is that the traffic patterns for this particular site, what it was previously and what it is now, is the traffic pattern is going to be very similar. It's just the access is much improved, from being able to limit, where folks can go and how they get in and out. So I think it's much better in the proposed scenario. But a Walmart generates a lot more traffic. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And in relative terms, this would generate very little traffic compared to the Walmart, this particular use. So or a Chick-fil-A or any of the other uses. This is a car wash is a relatively low traffic generator.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one final one for Kevin. Do you feel like there's, anything else left on the table as far as, potential enhancements or improvements to this, as far as increasing the safety of this that maybe were considered but not fully pursued?
Right, and you can tell that the design team's well versed, and we had a lot of good conversations. One thing I want to make clear: it would not be best practice to extend that median, because it restricts they would have to work internally. So just wanted to make that clear, that looking at the median, extending that past, it's not a best practice. As you go into your deliberations, just something to keep in mind. We've worked hard to get to the product we are. Every layout, every design, a lot of it depends on driver capability and being aware of what you're doing. This is very similar. So, but no, where we're at, we landed on, we felt like it was a good spot to be. You can go from there, but I'm not trying to be vague. I apologize, but the discussions we've had, we've taken into account looking which way trips are going, where the vacuum cleaner's going. For example, are the vacuum cleaner traffic, are they going to use the cross access around the site? Maybe, but where we fell is a product that we felt at least good bringing to the table, but no concerns at this point.
Molly, could you come up for just one more second and bring up the site plan? And I don't know if this is a question for you. Just trying to get my head wrapped around the layout of this and why the driveway on Pleasant Valley is critical to the design as it is.
Sure. So the path for drivers coming off of Pleasant Valley Road, let's say, for example, they're coming from northeast? If that driveway's not there, they have no good options, right? So they're coming in off the cross access, circling all the way around the site, almost 360 degrees before they ever enter the car wash, and then driving around some more to get out. And so, as you heard from the experts from staff, this was a balance of the safety, the efficiency, and the convenience that the standard calls for. So we felt that this is where those balance on the whole.
Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none, we will now hear from other individuals wishing to provide factual testimony. Anyone from the public? Hearing none, I will close the hearing for commission deliberation. Any thoughts? Certainly it's better than what's there. I think nobody has any questions about that.
That's not quite the standard, though.
Yeah, that's not the standard. So it sounds like there's been quite a bit of discussion about the driveway on Pleasant Valley. I kind of wondered why they didn't have the driveway off of the cross access road to the north, and why they couldn't have that and just get rid of the one off of Pleasant Valley, but it's just a little bit further, I guess.
The left turn out, it's not really that side, this side's fault entirely. It's the left turn movement across the median that seems crazy.
Yeah.
And that combination is what is concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get no debate from me that this is not better than what is there. You know, to the point that that's not the standard, right? It's the standard is that driveway spacing, or does that driveway spacing compromise safety, in any way? I don't like it. I do it at this intersection. Quite honestly, I've come out of that Bunkies and turned left, and the other car wash right behind it. I don't like it, but again, I think to your point, Corey, having the option, you know, just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have to do it. And I think in this case, having that cross access provides someone who may be less risk averse than myself to make that left. It gives them a safer option
To turn left out across.
to
Pleasant
utilize
Valley.
the cross access to get further away from Glenwood Avenue to make that left.
Wait, can you say that again?
Sure.
I'm not sure I totally understand.
Sure.
Like
So-
they're cutting through?
So if I want to come, if I'm done washing my car, and I want to get back out to Glenwood Avenue, the shortest approach or shortest way is to utilize this entrance that we're talking about. I pull up to that exit and try to turn left, and there's a median in the way, and there's somebody coming out of the Burger King right there that wants to turn left as well, and there's a bit of a conflict as Kevin referred to. If I don't like that scenario, I may have to do it that first time because I'm already sitting there. But I also know that I've got the option of the cross access to come out and get further away to a safer intersection.
Yeah. I'm just not sure why we would let that. I mean, that sounds like they compromise the safety.
My
The
concern.
left turn motion
yeah.
seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
My concern is that, I mean, I've gone to Bunkies a million times, and I, can pull out now, onto Glenwood. But now we're taking everybody. The only way to get out, really, the main way to get out is through that Pleasant Valley exit and turning left to get back on. And so you are encouraging more people to use that, in my uneducated opinion.
It does seem that way, yeah.
And, if there's some signage or something else maybe that directed people to use the other cross-access road farther up to be able to turn left and go down Pleasant Valley, I don't know.
If
to
that
me,
was
it does not
yeah,
feel safer.
Yeah, if that was a right out only or not there at all, everyone would would basically have to go to that cross access road or whatever. I don't know if it has a name, but is that and then that would be, and certainly that would be a safer condition.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, yeah. Now, this is a hard one. I mean, you got to give them some access points and some egress points.
That's true.
Somewhere. I mean, this is a hard one. I mean, they've definitely done better than what's there today. I mean, the ride-in. I mean, they've agreed to limit that access to just a ride-in, and I get it. I mean, it's not the safest coming back out, which I've done, but yeah. So you're sending everybody up that direction, and that's where I would think the majority of the people are coming from is Glenwood.
Yeah.
And want to return to. But we didn't necessarily hear from the owner. I'm assuming he wants it the way it is because that's the way it's drawn. But we didn't really necessarily hear from him directly either.
Yeah.
I think for Molly, I'm on board with driveway spacing if they were to remove the left turn movement on Pleasant Valley.
Yeah.
If that is amenable or if that is integral to the design, then
I'd like to take a couple of steps back because I think there are a couple of helpful clarifications here. One is that the applicant team did prefer to have an exit on Glenwood, and learned in working with staff that they felt the safer condition would be to not have that, to put all the traffic up on Pleasant Valley, which, as you've all acknowledged, this plan makes great strides toward increased safety on this site overall, without neglecting the other two components of the standard, the efficiency and the convenience. And I'm afraid if we took away both, we'd be focusing on one of the three equal standards in there. So just that background. I don't think you'd heard yet that this was very much a staff request to limit that Glenwood access.
You want to speak to Will's question?
Sure. Whether the limit on the left out is acceptable.
Yeah, amenable to the owner.
We'll need to discuss.
Chair Walters, to clarify, is this opening of the second evidentiary?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Could you repeat the question so I'll make sure I answer it specifically?
Well,
Would the applicant be amenable to limiting, or I guess removing the left turn access on Pleasant Valley?
The left out.
Yes.
So we've already given up the left out. We wanted a right in, right out onto Glenwood. So we were going to get egress off the site from Glenwood, Pleasant Valley, and utilize the private drive if necessary. Well, we eliminated the way to get off of the site from Glenwood. So now I'm down to two ways to get off property. And so if we take it so that the left out is, basically what I understand is you do not want us to exit from Pleasant Valley at all?
No, just eliminating the left-hand motion, still allowing the right in and the right out, but the left out.
Would eliminate the left out of the, yeah.
Does that make sense? Are you following what I'm saying?
You would not be able to turn left from this primary exit onto Pleasant Valley.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
I feel like we've provided, like you had mentioned before, that for those folks who are maybe uncomfortable with making that left turn, I feel like that they can get out by using the private access, and they can get a little further down away from Glenwood. This has been a long time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how long, we have been working to try to get this resolved, and we worked closely with staff. I know John worked very closely with staff to make sure that what we provided was amenable to the city, and I do understand your concern. So I guess if I'm being told that is my only option, then
another option, I mean, if you wanted to explore other options, we could defer. If you wanted to explore other options, that I'm sure you feel like you've explored all the options, but I don't think we're just kind of asking. But also, we could defer the case, and you could explore other options and come back with what you found. I certainly understand. You've been doing this for a while, so
2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
Trying to get this thing started. So yeah, it's been quite a challenge. I think Rhino would like to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing to think about. What happens if you do make that a right in, right out? Mm-hmm. And I think that situation is going to be worse. As I was mentioning earlier, if you can't turn left out of here, the only way to really restrict that is to put a median down Pleasant Valley, and you're blocking off other driveways, other things. So but even if you could do that, these people turn right out of here, they're going to whip around the end of the island, which is a bad situation. So the left out, it's going to create a bad situation. Not everybody's going to go to the cross access and go out, because this is the more straightforward approach. Somebody's going to get up there to that driveway here, our driveway, and they're going to say, oh man, I can't go left out of here, what do I do? They're going to turn right and find some place to whip around the island, in the middle of Pleasant Valley, which is not good. And the other thing, if you think about it, taking away the left end has a similar and probably even a more unsafe situation. This driveway back here is not going to be intuitive for somebody coming down Pleasant Valley. They're not going to recognize, oh, this is the entrance to the car wash. And if you think about all these driveways up and down there, they have driveways right at the use. So
I don't think anybody's suggesting that we take away a right in.
Or the left out. Or the left in. Purely the left out is the only.
Here's what I'm saying. If you take away the left out, you almost have to take away the left in.
Otherwise, people will just do it anyway.
Yeah, you almost have to.
Yeah.
So, because the only way you're really going to do that is to put a median down Pleasant Valley, and then you're creating more issues. So I'm just, the traffic volumes are pretty low here. By taking away all these driveways, I think maybe Mr. Bates mentioned it earlier, you're going to force everybody to one spot, and that can create congestion and issues there too. So it is truly a balance. It really is. It's not the best situation in the world, but spreading that traffic out to some degree at multiple driveways is better than overloading them all at one. So if you have all the left turns happening at that cross-access driveway, that could have worse consequences, than you might think. So. But anyway, I just want to point that out. If you do that, there's unintended consequences there.
I appreciate that, and I wonder, because you're absolutely right. I think when you start limiting people, then you're starting to back people up, and people's their intensity of their thought process change as they're getting ready to turn left. They get a little more antsy. Oh, I'll pull out because I've got 4 people behind me, and maybe it's not the safest time, but I'm going to do it. So I think the more access points probably is a better thing. I wonder what your thought is about signage, about just giving people an option so they know that other access is there. If that's something that would be better or not, or either way.
We can work on maybe something like that too, just to let people know there is another way out of there. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to help with that. Yeah.
Have you experienced any designs like that working in a scenario like this, or have any experience with that?
You mean the signage to direct people?
Yeah, successfully using signage to direct people.
Yeah,
not the most obvious place.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to have that. And I think letting people know, because like what you're hearing earlier, I think one of you may have said it earlier that some people are going to feel very comfortable making that left turn. There's some may not. So if they have the option to go a different way and they know that when they come out, we can certainly work. I would think to work with staff to get something there to help with some additional signage, let people know there is another way out.
The Harris Teeter at the intersection of Glenwood and Oberlin comes to mind as you're exiting that. To go eastbound on Glenwood, you go this way, and to go westbound you actually go east in order to come back, and so you have to have that signage there. So maybe there's something along that line.
Yeah, could you redesign that while you're here?
There's a lot of problems across the city. So,
all right. Well,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go ahead and close the deliberation close the hearing for commissioner deliberation at this time. All right. Well, we've certainly made some people nervous.
Well, with all that said, at some regard, you got to trust the professional engineers, which we've got a few of them here, right? Yeah. And they've all spoken. And they've all said that this is, a better situation. Maybe not the ideal situation, but a better situation than we have today, and probably the best situation that we can do for this specific location. So.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with that. I like the idea of some signage if they're amenable to that. Just giving people an option, another option to get out of there. But but that's that part of it. We can talk about the other ones separately if other people have comments on this.
Yeah, I don't know that I had any issues with the build to your requirements.
Yeah, I certainly appreciated adding the
wall.
The wall to actually meet build 2, and I think aesthetically that certainly helps, and wasn't required. So I won't say anything else about the architecture.
Yeah, I'd just like some additional thought with that wall and some of that, and the building and how it kind of relates along that streetscape. But I think a little bit more thought.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just a building and a wall. It's
Okay, Molly, can you
more.
pull up that rendering so we can take a look at it? And this rendering reflects the site plan correctly.
That's right. Right, he makes a good point that this does not show the landscaping.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I feel comfortable that they've done. They've given it their best shot. I mean, it is the use is what it is, and and by adding that wall, it definitely adds more architectural statement to that and extends that across and gives it some visual interest.
Yeah.
So
I think I can get behind that as well, and
And I think along the Pleasant Valley side, yes, we're talking about a reduction from the 50%, but we're not talking about it's not a dramatic reduction.
Right.
Yeah.
Along that side, I think it was 42% that we were going to.
And, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want it to be any longer, the building to be any longer, right?
Yeah.
So,
can we see those standards that based on that? Can we pull those up?
the build 2 standards?
Yes.
It's consistent with the intent.
That's what you want to see?
I think the only one that would be up in there would be 2.
I mean, it definitely doesn't change the pattern that's already out there.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
Exactly.
If anything, it helps the pattern that's already out there. It makes it better. So, yeah. And then, as far as the driveway spacing, I mean, they're about as far as you're going to get from the intersection, and still be on their site, especially out the right turn in from Glenwood and the other. So, and aligning it relatively with where it is now.
I agree. I'm not concerned at all about the build 2.
Yeah.
And I am concerned that that left turn motion seems crazy.
It does.
And it feels almost textbook example of some of the potentially conflicts that you're wanting to minimize through in terms of its, and I understand it's the site conditions, but
yeah, I agree.
There is the ability to make that motion through the cross access. So it is a convenience versus a.
Yeah, I would certainly, to Ramy Kemp's perspective, if we really don't like that left out, I would get rid of that entire driveway, not do some kind of amendment.
I'm sorry, I'm unable to hear the discussion.
Yeah. What's that?
I'm unable to hear the discussion.
Oh.
We can't hear.
Oh, you can't hear. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It seems like either you get rid of the whole driveway or you deal with what you've got. Just because limited access for that seems like it may make things worse.
Yeah, and it sounds like even you closing it down, I think, creates other issues.
Yeah.
On the side, I think if as we discussed, if there was a motion having that requirement that signage be established at least making motorists aware that there is another option
Yeah.
to exit the site.
What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I don't know that I fully agree that I agree. I don't think getting rid of that access point is a good idea. I think you can tell people to turn right, and if they don't follow the signage, that's on
That's
them.
on them. Yeah.
I feel that
there's a reason why there's that median there,
Yeah.
to give that spacing to the intersection, and we're right at the edge. And then there's that, I think, as was worded, the possibility that two cars turning left could occupy the same space
Mhm.
on a 5-lane busy intersection road. It's just challenging for me.
I think
The original, the previous condition of this site, I didn't hear, and I don't know if they offered, is it where there's a substantially high number of incidents there?
I think we
Because I
heard that
feel
there's.
like the previous
I think we've
situation
heard that
was
there has
worse.
not been.
Yeah, so if the previous situation was worse, and what we're doing is actually moving into a better position, then I think what they've done supports that there's not necessarily a significant issue right there. Is it inconvenient? Is it, testy? But does that condition exist in a multitude of places across the city? Yes. And
Yeah.
I think,
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think the intent, obviously, if the code and regulations are to eliminate these conflicts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
that's true.
I feel confident that knowing that Kevin has looked at this, that every possible option has been considered and they've discussed it, and knowing that we have other engineers that say that this is the best route, that I think, I don't feel comfortable overruling, as an architect, something that 3 engineers are telling me that this is the best option for this site. So with that, I would move to approve all the conditions.
Do you want to make
With-
that motion with the signage
With
condition?
Yeah, with a condition that additional signage be placed as I don't want to say how that's done, as directed maybe by the city, or as additional optional signage, or signage to give alternate options.
We don't place
I don't know how you
conditions
say that.
anymore.
Maybe the
I have a
attorney
proposal.
can help me.
Yes, that we could place additional signage informing users about the secondary exit option.
Thank you.
Wayfinding signage, right?
Thank you. Yes.
And can we just be clear about which
Secondary.
alternate that
Yeah.
this is applying to?
Driveway spacing.
Driveway spacing.
And specifically
The
6, I believe, but I just want, I believe it's the 6th.
Not 5. 6.
Would it be the
Six.
last one?
6.
That's the
Yeah.
83-foot design alternate to the minimum 30-foot,
Yeah.
300-foot
That's what I
along
think.
Pleasant
Yep.
Valley?
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, could we repeat that condition in its entirety, please?
Yeah, I think we're still thinking about it. So it would be
I think-
clear wayfinding signage directing users to the shared driveway as primary exit.
Molly said so
So would
eloquently.
would we want the restriction to be that we're directing them to it, or that we're making them aware of it?
I think
There's clear wayfinding signage directing site users to the private drive as the primary exit.
Okay.
I wasn't suggesting there was a primary exit. I was saying there's an alternate exit.
But the signage, I guess, doesn't have to say primary.
No,
Just
I,
like,
I think that
you
it's
can
an
get
my
out this
question.
way.
Wasn't sure how to reply with that one.
Directing the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's clear that you can get out.
it's
this
an
way.
alternate
Just
way
informing
to.
them that it's there.
That's
and
correct.
That's another way out.
That's correct. So can you
So-
help
okay.
us
So-
with that one more time, Molly, so she can get it?
Sure. There'll be a requirement for wayfinding signage informing users of the secondary access point on Pleasant Valley Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alternate means of egress.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
So that's my motion.
I second that motion. Any other discussion?
And just to be clear,
Yeah.
that's motion is for all of the.
That is
It's
for all.
It is for
That's
all.
for
of
all.
them.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following the adoption of the decision. Thank you. All right, that ends the quasi-judicial portion of this evening. I was asked to give a little time right now to the attorney for the attorney's comments.
Yeah, and we have none.
None. Great. All right. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, and I'm going to step out.
Yep.
So y'all can continue on. Yeah. I just need your name. I don't know if it's
All right. So next thing on the agenda, I think, is meeting minutes. Let's see here.
Well, thank you to all of the attorneys who subbed in today.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Ooh, that was a big one.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
This was the July 7th.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at them right
which
now.
was one that we did have a lot of discussion on, but I'm comfortable with how it's portrayed.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
I'm
not
gonna.
present.
What's that?
I wasn't present.
You were, yeah. I can see that here on the minutes.
I don't think I would.
I went from never missing a single one to.
Yeah, you were just like, I'm
missed
out
a
of here.
few, Missed a few.
That's funny.
Apologize for that.
All right, meeting minutes are approved. Or do we need it?
We didn't vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting minutes approved. In sake of time, I don't know that we have, so we can talk about, Casey, could you just give us a quick review on what happened with the legacy project this week? Thank you.
So very briefly, I coordinated a site visit with Chuck Flink at NC State. That happened on Tuesday morning out at the proposed future Midtown Waterfront Park area, kind of by Creekside Drive and Industrial Drive, that area by Wake Forest Drive as well. It was a great meeting we had. Obviously, Chuck was there. Doug Johnson from the Appearance Commission joined us. Myself, Jason Harden from the Planning Department, who was instrumental in the Walkable Midtown Planning Project or plan, as well as some representation from our Parks Department and Stormwater, since those are big players in the floodplain and all the different factors that are going on out there. So it was a good discussion, lots of talking about known concerns, what's happening on adjacent properties, the existing greenway, upcoming projects in the area, like a proposed pedestrian bridge across the creek to the greenway path that's on the north side of the creek. So just a nice discussion, helping provide Chuck with a good introduction to some of the city staff and the Appearance Commission that will kind of be assisting as needed with the project and to orient him to the site. So just a heads up that the fall semester, because he's with NC State working with some students to do the project, the fall semester is meant to sort of be the evaluation of existing conditions, assessment of the property or the project area, and so there'll be a report out at the end of the semester, and so we started talking about how best to engage the Appearance Commission and potentially some other commissions like the Parks Commission with that presentation from NC State, so that would be later in the fall. We'll have more information, obviously, as we get closer to that. And obviously, if there's other touch points where you think Appearance Commission input might be helpful, feel free to reach out and let me know. And then the spring semester would be the actual design ideation and coming up with some potential projects or scope of projects for that area. And so there'd be, again, additional reporting out and presentation in the springtime from the students and NC State on what that report would be, and again, opportunities for commission input and city input on those reports.
Casey, does it make sense to have, so would you say that, you said Jason Harden?
Mm-hmm.
Would it make sense to have some folks in the city identified to directly kind of be involved in this project throughout this next year, so that they can be involved in I mean, they could come to this meeting, it could be presented at an Appearance Commission meeting and they could be here, or we could, go there. But I think it's just really important to have someone from the city that's kind of there throughout this whole process.
So I'm sort of de facto kind of being that bridge between the Appearance Commission staff and NC State, the NC State group. And definitely we inform Chuck, there's certain departments obviously that will want to, if they need data or information, like we're here to provide that if we have it for them. Obviously we're funding them to do the project. So to that end, we want to kind of let them do that. But obviously we're here as a resource if they need information or questions or whatever, and to coordinate with the commissions and any other parties that might be good for input or beneficial to the project that they're working on.
Okay.
Well, thanks for setting that up. I appreciate that. I really wanted to go, but I had other interviews going on at the same time. But appreciate the invite for sure.
Sure.
It was
yeah.
great.
Well, it was hot.
I'll bet.
So
I'll bet.
we tried to find the shade where we could. So
Yeah.
that was one of the things we talked about.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
This can be a question for another time potentially, but is there any critical timing for us in terms of when we need to take back up legacy project conversation in this fiscal year?
I think
specifically
we
for that
probably want to
spring
wait till
semester
after the Sir
conversation.
Walter Raleigh Awards
Totally.
is done, so we have an idea of what funding there might be available for additional
Okay.
potential projects.
Just as long as that is clear, because I know it was sort of presented as a package and then we approved. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Did you want a quick update on the Sir Walter Raleigh Awards? Okay. So we just about have nailed down the jury members. There's, as I mentioned, I emailed to Adam. We have one commission that we're waiting to hear back if one of their members is going to join the jury. We've received 14 nominations in 6 categories so far. Plus, I saw in my email there was a few more that came this afternoon after I came over here. So seems like we're looking pretty good there. We've received 2 artist portfolios so far. Hopefully maybe we'll get a couple more.
How do they look? Do they look like they would be good options?
They're very different approaches.
Okay.
A style, artistic style.
Like how she
but that
put
could be a
that.
good thing, right?
That's a very
Answer
polite
that
way of
question.
saying that, yeah.
We're already better off than last year.
In terms of the nominations.
100% better than last
yeah.
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, they're just different approaches, which is good to have variety.
And we just have 4 more days. Is that right?
Yep, the nomination is open through the 8th, so Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Need to get a last push, I think, probably.
Yeah, and the communications department has been posting on social media and doing some of that push. But by all means, please do share the information to get the word out as well. And then I just wanted to kind of tee up for the next meeting. I think that's August 18th, is when we'll be selecting the artist portfolio so that they have time to work up the design and get your guys' feedbacks in time to get printed for the awards in October. So just a heads up, next meeting, that will definitely be on the agenda to go through the artist portfolio. So
I'm going to ask what may be a stupid question. What's the date for Sir Walter Raleigh this year?
October 26th.
October
It's a
26th.
Wednesday evening.
Is that on the website?
The date?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It's
I don't
not?
think so.
Okay. Yeah. When do you think we should put that on there?
I'd want to talk to communications about that. They have some really good insights. Obviously, that's what they do, on how to approach that and balancing. Having the public be aware and able to attend, but also understanding the constraints on how many people we can realistically accommodate. So there's that balance, right?
So we have a date. Do we have a location?
Raleigh Union Station.
Okay, Raleigh Union Station again.
Yeah, which I think is where it was held in the spring.
I think
It's been there for
keeping it
the
there, yeah.
versus Chavis as a.
Chavis is good. Yeah. Yeah. We did talk about that.
Yeah.
I think the reason it's Union Station this year is because they already paid for it. Or they already, well, I guess they already reserved it because they don't have to pay for it because it's a city. They got some deal with the city. But, what's that?
I like that idea. It's walkable. It's close proximity to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're gonna
But
blow
I do
our
like
whole
the
budget
idea
on
of
it
keeping it, the idea open to do it.
We're gonna blow our whole budget on
That'd
it
be really cool.
this year. Coming out of, I missed it. I was out of town last year. I said we're gonna blow our whole budget on it this year and really make it a huge deal.
Well, yeah, I hope so. I think, yeah,
Gotta be coming
we
out of all
certainly
this
spent
mess.
more money than we needed to for the number of people that showed up last year. I mean, it was a good showing, but it's a lot. I mean, no matter how many people come, we end up spending a lot of money on it. And so my feeling is like, let's get a lot of people here.
Well,
because
in the
we're
past we've
otherwise-
always raised money. We've always asked for people donations.
Yeah.
So the last year, the last couple times we have not. Well, last year we did, and then the year before was virtual. So, but prior to that, it was always mostly supported by.
That's right.
Us going and calling people.
Yeah.
So that is an option to do that this year. The communications team, like so many city departments, has a lot of work to get done. So they've been diligently trying to get some updated information about the sponsorship options on the city website. So that's like imminent, like maybe tomorrow it might be live. We're just trying to make some edits and updates and then actually get it on the website.
We could just do the same sponsorship options we had before, but pretty much we're not going to get sponsors unless somebody on this commission goes out and finds somebody
That's
to
right.
say
Yeah.
yes.
And I wanted to be able to provide you the
We'd have
link
to
to the
break it up and
information
do some calling.
to share. So yeah, so if you have folks that are interested in sponsoring, please share that information. And we're, that's welcome, obviously.
Okay. Should we make a last effort here to share with our contacts that this is happening and?
Do you have a subcommittee for this? You're it.
I was just saying I got two. I know Sam gonna do it, and I have another company.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Salmon and who else?
F7 Development.
Okay.
Just-
That's great. That'd be awesome.
And we'll commit to being a sponsor in some way again as well.
Who are you?
How about that bunky car wash, dude?
I always forget.
That's okay.
You're the
Okay.
sponsor. That's great.
You could tell 2 years.
Maybe we can just send out an email asking the commissioners to, because there are many that aren't here, to think about sponsorships. We had 2 last year, Design Workshop and La Chase, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. I wonder too about reaching out to other committees. I think about planning commission, right? That's going to have, it's going to be made up of sort of maybe some of our peers.
Yes.
From a professional standpoint, that could help. They would be part of organizations that could sponsor.
That's a good idea. How can we do that?
I'll talk to Brian O'Haver at planning.
Okay. Oh, is he chairing that right now?
No, I'm gonna forget her name. Miller.
Yeah. She's been doing it a while.
Yeah.
Well, if we do it early enough, is there opportunity for some marketing for these, whoever donates, I mean, for some,
Yeah.
can they go on, some of the brochures or websites?
Well, I think
or
that's what
something?
you were saying
That's what
about
we've done.
communications.
Yeah, they're updating some of the stuff. Some of the stuff that was listed in the previous sponsorship information isn't things that are feasible or allowed. Like, we can't have logos on the city website and things like that.
Oh.
So there's some restrictions on some of those things. So they're working on obviously taking out the things that we just can't do, but trying to tweak it to maybe add some other opportunities.
Can we do
It's
some-
obviously like an announcement at the ceremony, or on the posters or on the invitations, things like that.
We could at least say silver, gold, platinum, whatever.
Yeah, no logo.
Sponsorship, and if they give a certain amount, but I think we need to know what that amount is. and-
Yeah.
I think the current draft version, it was like silver, gold, silver, bronze. It was like 1,500. It's a play on what was there
Yeah.
before. It was like 1,500, 500, and 100. I think might be where it's currently.
Gosh, we should
Maybe
get rid of the one.
250.
We should get rid of the 100. That's not enough.
255 and above.
I guess it's not from people. It's
You
from
can't
companies.
even buy
right?
anything for
Yeah.
$250.
Unless you want
Or you should start at
donate all your-
500.
Yeah, just in terms of the application still being open, are there any categories that feel like they're needing additional
So,
applicants?
Not counting the few that are in my email, I don't know what they are yet. I haven't looked at them. We have 5 for the commercial category, 1 for community impact, 2 for educational, 3 public spaces, 2 rehabilitation and historic preservation, and 1 residential.
Okay, so 1 community impact and 1
That's right,
residential
no,
being.
we need more. Yeah.
I think there's like 1
We really need to make a
that
push.
Don't
That's-
have any nominations, but I can't think of
Yeah.
what one that is.
Yeah.
We also don't have to give them. We
Oh,
don't have
yeah.
to
Yeah,
fill
you can
those.
spread 'em out.
We're giving no awards this year.
Although
No
we
one
don't
met
want to
the
have
bar.
a party and only have 2 winners, but
Yeah. Well, if folks can just do their best to reach out and let folks know.
with all the stuff going on.
If it's possible,
Yeah, it's Raleigh.
Raleigh, yeah.
the category that there are 0 applicants, to know that before.
So there's residential, commercial, rehabilitation, historic preservation, public facilities.
Public facilities is the one with 0 applications
I
currently.
think so. Let me double checking.
There's landscape design as well, right? We usually get 0 in that
Gave
one.
1 already.
Oh, they may have.
Last year or something. Yeah.
I know.
Didn't Chavis win
Public
something?
facilities,
Yeah.
landscape
And Moore Square before
design.
that.
Yeah, and then Moore Square before that.
So,
The 2 that we don't have any yet.
so we don't have any in landscape or public facilities.
Yeah, unless there's 1 or 2 in my email right now that we haven't seen.
Okay, well, there's
See what we can do.
there's
They've
universities
been
that we can
coming
talk
in
to. And
a lot just the last couple days.
Oh,
so.
good. Cool.
I mean, they got to know now. I mean,
All right. Great.
It takes a while to put all that stuff together.
Thanks for the update.
But
Sure.
it was expanded because it wasn't. First.
And if you do find out anything, or could you send out an email to the commission when you know about sponsorship, or just reminding folks about sponsorship
Yep.
now that that's
Yeah.
something we think we want to do?
Hopefully, I'll have that link for you tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm hoping tomorrow.
Okay.
That we'll have that.
Great. Well, thank you for all your hard work. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Who's on the? We have people here on the.
Sir Walter?
Yeah.
I can't remember
Whatever.
who's on it. I
Not doing it.
What's that?
Are you on it?
Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah. I think it's Chris said he wanted to be on it. And
You're talking about the jury?
Ed, maybe, said he would.
Jury.
Oh, you're talking about the jury?
Jury.
Oh, who?
Chris, right?
Yeah, me and Chris.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Room for a 4th?
Yeah. You want to be on it? That'd be great.
And I'll be happy to be on it if somebody else does. I mean, it's a good opportunity if somebody else wants to be.
Actually, I might like to not be on it.
I mean, I'm happy.
Because I'm doing everything else
Depending
on it.
who's on it,
Yeah.
if it's the same people as last year. I
No,
do
it's
not
actually
want to.
it's good. You just sent me the email of who it is. Am I allowed to say? I'm allowed to say. It is.
Is this being televised?
No.
Recorded meeting.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's,
it is?
let's
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Yeah. It seemed like a good group.
Good.
Just leave it at that.
Yeah, there's representation from like 5 different city commissions. Well, one's pending. 2 sort of guest jurors, and then some commissioners. So.
Yeah, yeah. We got Tom Skolnicki from NC State and an architect who I didn't know from.
There's one.
Bailey.
Yeah, Bailey from Bobbitt. Anyway. All right.
All right.
Anything else? Thank you all for the late night. I appreciate everyone's input and hard work. This meeting is adjourned.
There's one dude on the last show who just like the talk.